Come on, drink the water. I've led you here. Drink it.
Oh, don't sneak that in there.
Yeah, I'll sneak it in there. That's where you are. You got led here. Now drink the f***ing water.
I hate when he does that.
It was a good horse. Because he didn't say no, did he? He just said he hates it. Yeah, there you go. You all know my thoughts on Spilo. I think his ideas connect very well with reality. I don't think any of his ideas are wrong in any way. I am obviously a Spilo lover. I definitely beat him in a 1v1, and I probably outlived him. In terms of responding to things, I think he has, not purposefully, but accidentally, been turned off from certain ideas very easily when he finds one thing to disagree with. I think it's kind of like a switch goes in his head. He's happy, he's happy, he's happy. Onto the bad side. I kind of purposely made my video in a structure that could lead him to water. And you know about leading a horse to water, right? Once the horse is drinking, you can shoot it in the back of the head, right? Or you take your old decrepit dog, you lead it out behind the barn, and then you shoot it out behind the barn. So that was kind of like my idea of my video. I haven't seen all of it, but I've seen like little clips. It seems like we did exactly the same thing. I almost led him to water, and then do you know what he did? He slipped the collar at the last moment. I took a shot, and it ricocheted off a tree by him. Clearly accurate use of that analogy. Yes, yes. I am not just going to respond to this because haha funny or Ouroboros content telling me stupid, etc, etc. I'm going to respond to this because I need to watch back someone watching my content to see if I made convincing arguments, to see if I can make stuff better in the future. I need to see if I'm convinced when he's not convinced. Because if I'm not convinced, I've clearly f***ed up in some way, shape or form.
The worst and most damaging character ever been released in Overwatch.
Hey!
Because there's anything that Overwatch is renowned for, it's terrible design, glacial balancing, and
right, let's
bag on one of the most promising IPs ever released. In fact, when Overwatch players actually say we have the worst hero ever released in a game ever, nobody else even bothers to argue. But there's bold, in your face, breaking into your house through your window damaging, and then there's the type of damaging which gnaws at the foundations. One of the
Ooh, I like the analogy there. That's true, actually. Brig was very much in your face, but actually Brig has been pretty healthy now, and Roadhog is just Roadhog is that nagging, rotting leg that's been around for what, 7 years, like I said, or 8 years.
These options, it's theoretically fixable, even if the landlord doesn't do it for over 2 years, and one is so hard to notice that the house can start listing to the side before...
Do you like my Roadhogs in the background here? Do you like my editing here?
The combo has always been janky.
I learned to do something in order to do this proper tracking. Where is it?
The type of damage.
There you go.
In fact, when Overwatch players actually say,
look how quality this editing is, though, guys. Look at these mini Roadhogs.
But there's bold, in your face, breaking into your house through your window damaging, and then there's the type of damaging.
Look, I tracked all 3 of the Roadhogs. And edited the. I think it actually looks really good, honestly. It took me a little while to, but I'm like learning new skills like that. I have no idea how to do like proper motion tracking before. So.
Ooh, I like the analogy there. That's true. 7 years, like I said, or 8 years.
These 8 years theoretically fixable, even if the landlord doesn't do it for over 2 years. And
yeah, that's right. That's right.
That the house can start listing to the side before anyone realizes.
Yoink.
Roadhog has and always will focus around the hook, of which the instant kill follow-up has been retooled, removed, and re-implemented such a ridiculous amount of times that it borders on hilarious. The combo has always been janky.
See, that's the thing. Stop talking about whether Roadhog should have a one-shot or not. Start talking about why so much of this character's value comes through just his pure selfish value and the spike in value around Hook, which is not complex, it's not nuanced. It's you hit it or you don't. That's it. It's not like, you can't make the argument that, oh, having a long CD is a bad thing for tank, because Winston does that fine.
Tell me when there's notes up, guys.
But how you set up and how you engage and how you get value out of Bubble is remarkably nuanced and in depth. Same thing with Junker Queen Shout, right? Long cooldowns are not a problem. Having downtime and uptime is not a problem. The problem is that you hit the cooldown or you don't. And there's no complexity or nuance.
I think long cooldowns are a problem. There's no reason to aggressively use the cooldown.
Depth into that at all. Can I turn the volume up a bit? I think so, yeah.
If there's any awards here, it's probably for the most reworked ability in a game which still has the exact same intended purpose as it had before the rework. Honestly, it's not even clear how many times the hook has been changed, because personally I get the impression that on top of the actual we fixed the hook patches, there's just as many behind-the-scenes adjustments and micro changes that don't make it to the patch notes. One must imagine the devs happy recoding the same ability for the 8th consecutive year to avoid edge cases. And I mean, jank isn't...
Genuinely, I don't... Yeah, he didn't turn the volume up enough. It might be maxed out on it. I don't know how many times they've recoded the hook. It must have been a ridiculous number of times. But why is that an argument to stop talking about the one shot? I'm slow. Someone explain. Not 100% sure. I think he was just like Yeah, I'm not sure.
Defining crime in and of itself, especially after it's been fixed. And Hook is mostly consistent now. The problem isn't the jank. It's the fact that every time the instant kill Hook combo gets removed from the game, the player base for the hero drops off a cliff, and he either ends up abandoned in general, or more often the combo gets reinstated pretty fast.
See, this is it exactly. This has nothing to do with whether there's more risk with Hook or less risk for Hook, or whether, you know, Vape should heal this, or more damage reduction, or more healing, or 5v5 or 6v6. It's just broken. The entire design doesn't work. It doesn't work. Pigpen, no pigpen, multi-step, one-shot, one-step. There's no new.
See, I haven't walked him down the garden path yet. He's not behind the shed with the gun to the back of his head just yet, but I'm going to get him there.
There's no thought. There's no design. That's it. It's over.
It's happened over and over again at this point, with the latest time being the release of Season 9.
And I genuinely think this video was quite, like, informative to him in terms of, like, getting him to get down this tire. I think he probably... And that's the thing, I don't make content with nothing to say. I always have something important that I want to actually communicate when I make stuff. And I wouldn't bother with the time it takes regardless. And that's why, even if I'm a little bit miffed with Overwatch, and I'm a little bit miffed with the developers in general, I'm never going to quit doing content for Overwatch, because I have so much to say on the game. And I only make stuff that's important. Well, I find important.
The full rework to his kit 6 months ago has been widely regarded as an absolute failure in addressing really any of the pain points with his kit.
Yes.
The community sentiment at the moment is that the character is so unhealthy for the game that he should never be good enough to even see regular play. It seems the devs have given up on helping the situation, and therefore there's certainly no further improvements on the horizon. So we're stuck here, with a character who wasn't even well conceived when released 8 years ago,
random face cams,
and who makes people want to quit the game entirely every time his play rate peaks. Before Overwatch, the hero-based shooter genre was in its infancy. Honestly, Heavy from TF2 was kind of the only real direct inspiration for how tanks might work. And outside the genre, we had very few good examples of what a PvP tank should be. In almost all cases, this role failed miserably because the PvE concepts like holding aggro and mitigation don't even slightly correlate to a PvP game. I mean, after all, people can just choose not to shoot you. If you look very simply at World of Warcraft PvP, the tanks are, as a universal truth, always less of a kill target for burst damage because of the mitigation and health pools, and in order to balance out this lack of...
I'm interested that people's, and specifically Ammon, start talking to me about World of Warcraft PvP after this. Open up another browse tab where I ran a YouTube video. I think it's not busy enough. Oh wait, I didn't even realize this was on. When did that appear? Yeah, okay, I got it.
They had to be on the whole less lethal and have less burst than normal class spells. This led to the role being, overall, just horribly boring to play with and against. You have low impact, and you buy and whole are less effective as a hero than other specs. And I'd go as far as to say that every iteration of PvP tanks before Overwatch had and still have failed in some way.
You get to finally rewatch my video as well.
For tanks, the devs never really were designing from a place of understanding. Because quite frankly, especially in 2016, nobody in any industry understood how to make them. Should they have CC? Should they give resources to others like supports? Should they anchor the team? Should they have shields? All of these answers were always kind of yes and no.
You look at his brain processing, the walk down the garden path to the back. At some point, the shotguns are going to come out.
The devs seemed to have locked down at launch was firstly that they should be bigger, and that meant the health bar was pretty much scaled to model size, and secondly that they should be able to take aggro from the team.
And I think that's very clear. The only things that the devs had consistent within the design of the tank category is the fact that they were bigger. How long did the editing take for this video? I'd say probably about 10 hours. Random roasts all over the place. Your cuts are so busy. I think it feels less busy when you're watching it in and of itself. I think with me and Spilo here, it's very busy at Ogara. I'm happy for you to mention when it's been busy or less busy, because I need to work that out for the future. Failed in some way? Yeah, I don't think tanks in PvP have failed completely. I think they have just always been poor in terms of implementation. Everything 10 hours, even mini hog skit? Yeah, mini hog skit took me like 30 minutes. I think the starting took me about like an hour. Basically my editing process at the moment is basically a full run through for audio. I get the audio perfect, and then I go through with obviously I wouldn't include the recording of these. It takes me like an hour to record each game in terms of like, I do 3 run-throughs of the game with different angles. I do one following the, I do one following the action, one doing panoramic views, and then one for quirky shots. And that's how I do like the big picture game at the start. And then I go through and I have all 3 on the timeline, and I basically cut between them as I want to and move myself around. Once you actually got it all on the timeline, it doesn't take that long. You can't copy and paste it in. You have to like manually do it. And there is a lot of finicky editing with that. but honestly, it's not crazy in terms of the amount that it requires after you've actually got it, because quite frankly all you're doing is you're just translating yourself to where you want to be. There's not that much extra, and then you just cut to the most interesting shot at any one time in every sentence to try and change it
in some way, shape, or form. Some of the ideas they came up with were just clunky. The original DM on a button instead of a meter felt too easy to bait out and too hard to get consistent value from. Some of these ideas were just not good for the game in general. I mean, the ranged anchor tank playstyle of Orisa was just broken on arrival, because if you make a character who can break a choke,
I like this following around the tourbillon.
You've necessarily made a character who can defend a choke really well when standing on good terrain on the other side of it. I think it's really easy and common for people to be smug.
You notice that that's a blues tourbillon running all the way behind a red team in order to put a turret in the backline.
Mistakes.
I noticed that in a Evolved review, and was like, I'll just follow the tourbillon around.
Forget the Blizzard were, in a very real way, laying the tracks down in front of them as they were going.
That's
and
true.
This is why it's so stupid.
And again, like you said, like there is no precedent for this. Say what you will about tank, but there is, at least at our understanding, as much as I've studied tank and support, there is no easy solution to tank at all, because it is a fundamentally flawed character within first-person shooters. And
I disagree with that. I think it's fundamentally flawed in most of them. But specifically in Overwatch, I think it's saved by the fact that you can control space with a character, and space actually matters as a concept. The Subway Surfers would make it better.
We want tank because we're willing to pay the price because it introduces nuance, but
I don't think that's true. I think there is an interesting enough gameplay loop with moving people around without killing them and having bigger cleaves due to the fact that players are incentivized to group up and be smashed apart by tanks. The tank is an engaging thing to play, and the idea that you can outplay somebody mechanically without having to aim has always been interesting in a game. I think that's great as an addition to the game.
It's like having a really cool sport.
Shouldn't that be true of any positional shooter? Sorry for pausing so much. Yes, it is true for any positional shooter, but specifically the ones that have tanks, you think about how they work. For instance, Valorant with Chamber. Chamber was acting as a tank for a very long time because Chamber could be used in order to soft peek an angle and apply pressure to an angle in order to stop players standing there and to basically take a pot shot and instantly TP out. And they had to nerf him over and over and over again. And the reason why they had to nerf him so much was because he was crazy good in Valorant as acting as kind of like a tank. Yeah, my chat's on the top right at the moment. Couldn't tank concept be viable for all positional shooters? Yeah, sure. It could be viable for all positional shooters. The question is whether the gameplay actually supports that, whether it's implemented properly, etc. In terms of like World of Warcraft, the trouble with World of Warcraft PvP, and I'll get up a WoW Arena map. The trouble with World of Warcraft PvP is they just don't fucking care. To do images. Dalaran Sewers. Dalaran Sewers is a good one. Here's Dalaran Sewers, guys. What is the tank gonna do on here? It's not a thing about space control. It's a thing about cooldown management in World of Warcraft PvP. So much cover. Yeah, so much cover. And people will duel out behind the cover, but they duel out behind they use the cover in order to have downtime to regenerate cooldowns or to stop pressure from the enemy team. They don't use it as an advantageous space to use. Right, Sick? Because it's a targeting system which is automated by the fact that you have them selected. I always thought the Chamber was being played as a duelist in Valorant. Does that make Jet a tank? Yes. It makes Jet the closest that Valorant has to a tank. Obviously, there is no direct comparison because they have the same health pools and they can't realistically apply soft pressure because they have a better gun and stuff like that, because every character has the same amount of pressure by necessity because they can all use all the guns. But that is the type of character it is, yes. 100%. And that's why I kind of like playing Chamber before they got nerfed to shit. And that's why, fundamentally, he had to be nerfed to shit. Because he was a character from a different game gallivanting into Valorant. The idea that you could soft peek an angle, and it could be a hard peek for the enemy team and a soft peek for you, all the time as long as you have teleport on cooldown, absolutely insane. Crazy. They had to just take it out, basically. And that's why they had to nerf him so much for the most part. And Headhunter, something like that. He was obviously OP in other ways, but you get me. More the ability to play on all off angles? Yep. I agree with that as well. Had to hard clear every single one and down. Yep. These boxes, as a tank player and trying to push the support off the box and force cooldowns, the trigger to swap to the other character is if I can force the support off the box out of line of sight, or his team member, then me and my partner, hard swap. The trigger to swap to the other character is if I can force the support of the boxes out of LOS of his team member, then me and my partner hard swap. Yeah, but I think we all get with this, just this picture, I think we all get the idea that that World of Warcraft fundamentally just does not have the same care for positioning based advantage that the Overwatch does. Positioning can be used to take away an enemy team's advantage, but it can't be used as well to provide you an advantage. Yeah? You look at all of them, right? Famous one. And I have to load into each one. Right. You load there, you load there. These pillars go up and down. It's a flat map. Yeah, that's why it failed. Because having lower lethality and higher health pools just is a more boring way of playing the game when it's based on cooldowns.
Spoiler on your car, a really cool paint
We could discuss this for ages. I think we may as well just move on. But I think most people kind of get my idea.
job, a mock-up. It might not be fully functional. It just looks really cool and it's really fun. You know what I'm saying?
Remarkable that one of the most interesting perks of Overwatch 1's development is that they completely
That map got removed.
nailed tanking and tanks so early on in the first development cycle. Reinhardt, Winston, Zarya, D.Va, Hog. Winston and Reinhardt were characters who wanted to do a big...
I'm sure it didn't take me long to put them on the screen.
enemy team. Zarya and D.Va were characters.
I don't know why there's artifacts there. I definitely tried to remove them all. I don't even know what character it's on. It must be on Reinhardt.
Big bursty resources, which, whether by design or by lucky accident, could be used to let Winston and Reinhardt cleave and do their big burst deeper and further into the enemy team. These heroes were honest and fun to play, and from that moment onwards, a common opinion that stood all the way up to the end of Overwatch 1 was that the only good metas were ones where these hero combinations were viable in some way. The pedigree
He lets that go. Interesting. Because I thought he wouldn't let that go.
equality given by these first 4 tanks
But he even nods. So he's still on the garden path.
was never followed up by concept.
It's just so funny to watch him like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and see where he falls off on the reasoning.
Even slightly as universally well thought of by the community, until arguably I'd say Junker Queen's introduction 6 entire years later. And then we had
That's actually a great point too. Like how many honest tanks have we had since then? Interesting, dynamic, nuance, provide indirect and direct value, skill-based. You know, I mean, it's Junker Queen, you know?
Do you guys see what I did there? Do you guys see what I did there? Purposely gave him a carrot, and I gave all of the players that might be questioning at this point a little carrot by mentioning Junker Queen to keep them on track down the garden path. I was like, here's a sweet. You keep coming, keep going. There's loads more sweets back here. Come on, behind the shed. Come on, the shotgun's not there. There's no shotgun behind there. Come on.
I think Sigma has done better in the solo tank environment. I will give some credit to that as well. I think Ball is a different breed and not necessarily a bad one. But yeah, but Sigma was really bad in 6v6, so...
Sigma was really bad in 6v6? Question mark? What are they fucking talking about? Sigma wasn't that bad in 6v6. Sigma was bad because the resources of shield were overpowered, obviously, and the AoE healing was too good. That's kind of like, come on. Yeah, is that true? Is that like a little bit disingenuous to argue?
His own purpose was to walk around the map, instant killing everything he comes into contact with, and that's what he is. Come rain or shine, 8 years
for the game,
still exactly the same. And that's a question I want to answer
Sure.
here. Why is he the same, and what implications has that had on the
Gameplay
game
loop wise, I don't think Sigma's gameplay loop was bad in 6v6. Sigma's gameplay loop was based on macro positioning for the most part. Bad for 6v6, sure.
As a whole. Honestly, I think that a sizable margin of the blame goes to the hero design process at Blizzard. When they make a character, it's always been commonly known that a lot of weight goes into whatever ends up on the
I thought he
communal
questioned
mind
this.
map of their hero fantasy board. Hero fantasies appear to be
see.
the catch-all term to describe an aspect of the character which makes them stand out as unique and interesting in the cast. The hero fantasy of Reinhardt probably has something like Paladin, Protector, Hammer, Shield, German, I love him, and other things like that on it. This has been amazing in terms of focusing different elements of the team on the core concept of heroes.
Thought I opened a
which makes
super
them
video.
actually
Shut
really
up with
good.
the
It's
super
easy to
thing.
imagine that it allows the different departments to individually work on
Man,
different
this
parts
is
of the
good
hero
music.
and stay on the same
I didn't even
page
realise he did it.
to be CC'd in and improve every step of the process. And that's the genius of the system.
First time I played it on stream and you guys said it was super music, it was already in the fucking video.
So for me, the hero fantasy has always been like finding like what the hero needs to act and feel like, and then introduce small weaknesses and counterplay capability into that character so that when you play versus the character, you can either feel like the character is filling that archetype or not, but that the choice is up to you. When you're playing Reinhardt, in a situation like a healthy composition or a healthy position for Ryan, your mistakes are your mistakes.
I think the hero fantasy is about all of the lore, all of the design, all of that sort of stuff, but it's also about the average gameplay experience, the average gameplay loop, and the peaks of the gameplay experience and the peaks of the gameplay loop. I really want them to grab lab monkeys, attack brain cables, and see what makes players release dopamine. Are you okay, Float? Do you need somebody called for you?
But if you're playing Reinhardt and you don't feel like you made a mistake, but you still get punished, there's anger involved there. So
it's okay, Flu. We got what you meant. We're just still concerned.
Since I made a video about this, the existence of counterplay from both ends is the difference between sustaining the hero fantasy and shattering it.
Fat finger, okay.
Because I don't expect to pick up Genji into a comp that I can play Genji into and fail because I'm mechanically bad and blame the character on not fulfilling my hero fantasy. It's just a skill issue.
Sure, but the hero fantasy of Genji is being provided by the average gameplay experience of Genji, the gameplay loop of Genji, and also the fact that Genji has his peak moments. And that's the great thing about Overwatch. Every character by default can have their peak moments defined by their ultimate, and that can be really engaging and good. And I said yesterday how I think players really work around their experience of the game 6 months on. What they really remember is the average gameplay experience and the peak gameplay experiences. If the bad parts are such a big part of the game or the gameplay loop that it takes over the average, that's when people have a negative opinion of the character 6 months on. I don't think people have the negative selection bias in terms of their memories that people think they do. I actually think they have quite a positive selection bias, and I would be interested to see if anyone could parse that out in science anywhere.
But it has to be a skill issue is the problem. It has to be a skill issue. Otherwise, people get upset, and the hero fantasy is shattered.
During the design process and the individual freedom for each department to find their own way to represent these goals. But what happens when the stupidest person in the room steals a permanent marker and writes something terrible on the mind map? What do you do when a core aspect of the hero's kit is not only central to the theme design of...
I thought he'd really have a problem with this because this part here is pretty speculative. It's pretty non-concrete because there's been very little released on the hero fantasy. I feel like the reason why he doesn't is because he doesn't know if anything's been released concrete on how they design and stuff like that. I feel like I am pretty much on the money that they have a whiteboard with traits and stuff like that they all collectively design from, and then they come back together and cohere it somehow. But it is speculative.
Fantasy, but is also fundamentally broken in both theory and practice.
See? I'm not the only one.
Reworks' reception on launch was really bad. Reinhardt had shield, Winston had bubble, Diva and Zarya had DM and projected bubble, but Roadhog had nothing aside from hook, which could obviously help.
How much are you doing the YouTube arm waves? Or here or there?
He had asked for a shield tank every game, and the basis that they were struggling if they couldn't stand.
You can't talk in that way without doing the YouTube arm waves. I'm doing a fair amount of YouTube arm waves right now. I just do it.
Like idiots. Luckily, the player base had mostly moved on.
August, I dare you to try and record something for an hour and not do YouTube arm waves to keep you awake.
To slowly filter down information to the plebs at the mid ranks. But it does go to show you that it definitely wasn't just the devs who were having trouble with the concept of tanking a PvP game. Eventually, after moving on from that infancy, we realized that characters like Brawl and later Doomfist and Junker Queen, who don't really ever do any backline peeling and don't really ever protect their team, were still doing the tanking job. Because the job of a tank has always been less about mitigation and more about making or holding space for your team and taking away advantageous space for the enemy team. If the enemy's on near you, they can't dive you. If the enemy's on a bad side,
yeah, he agrees with me.
You. If you're on a good place, your damage sources are strictly better, and if you're on a good place...
See, these are another couple of the treats I lay down the garden path and to follow.
The enemies have to use abilities to get that good place off you. But then we kept moving on and people kept getting smarter. Overwatch 2 about the off-tank made people realize really damn fast that it's not the tank's role to make space and the support's job to support and the DPS's job to kill things. Every player on the team takes, uses, and controls space.
Yes.
Control space by threatening the side.
Dude, I think like when God made coaches, he just gave them like extra brain power. I think that there's just like we might be the most intelligent people in the world. I think we're just talking about video games here, but we might be the greatest people ever. Honest.
I think the thing is there are some objective things to know about the game. In fact, there are a lot of objectively correct things to know. It's just that not very many people have passed them out. So people tend to converge on these things.
Also, jawlines are strong as well.
Nobody's going to say my jawline's particularly strong. Spilo's just a little bit insecure.
I don't know if you guys agree, but yeah.
Ball control space by booping enemies off good terrain and causing localized pressure on certain
This is your apprentice,
No, this
Spilo?
isn't my apprentice.
Kiriko controls whatever damn space you want because the idiot with the permanent markers.
Now, I teach him what he's going to say next month. I come up with his ideas for the future. That's what I do. I'm the one that thinks. Spilo's the one that copies.
Not yet again. Overwatch has always been a positioning-based shooter first, because when you run everything down to the brass tacks, the first and best advantage you can ever get is an advantage gained by being able to walk to a better place. So,
yes,
I said the correct
yes.
it's very hard to communicate this type of stuff. I want to be clear to people, like, this bit of scripting and getting this to flow properly is very difficult while still being engaging. Communicating properly about education for Overwatch and things that are good in Overwatch is so fucking hard to do because you are trying to communicate to so many different audiences at the same time. Am I just lagging for some reason? I feel like I'm like FPS. Yeah, you're trying to communicate to the casual audience, to the competitive audience. You're trying to communicate to the people that already know it, the people that don't know it, and it's hard. It's really hard. But I basically have to fully script it and rewrite. The scripting process for this probably took me about like 50, 60 hours in total to actually script and rewrite.
Oh yeah, you guys need to, yeah. Like while we're busy stealing his content here,
Are you trying to dislike Spilo?
hold on my way. You should go check out Ralph. Let me
yeah, check it out. He's cool.
Let me link
He's
it
cute.
in here really
He's
fast.
pretty.
Don't tell him I'm streaming right now.
Tell him I'm streaming. I didn't know.
Since launch, controlled space through moving enemies around through the threat of hook and pressure from his primary fire.
I didn't even know there people came in.
On by, as I said, walking to a better place. This concept is in many ways why Overwatch is the first game where tanky and PvP actually works, by the way. World of Warcraft PvP and other similar games, including MOBAs, are less three-dimensional and therefore fundamentally just don't care about space control.
How many of you guys have ever played a tank in PvP before?
Oh, cool. Yeah, talk about that.
In an MMO.
Yeah.
Have you guys ever done a tank in PvP and MMO before? I have. A few different MMOs. It was cheeks, dude. It was so bad. Tanks were so broken.
Yep.
At least this has been a while, so maybe it's changed in like the last 5 or 6 years. But they were so strong.
I don't know what an MMO
because
is.
Essentially, what you'd have
Spilo lowest common denominator viewer down there.
The tank class has to PvE, right? They have to PvE. Okay, so they need to have enough damage, at least to have a PvE line, so that they can do damage when they're not playing in a group or a raid or whatever, right? So then you have like these high mitigation, but like competent damage output. And the thing gets worse the closer you get to endgame, because endgame will often introduce like kits and builds that allow them to up their self-sustain, up their mitigation, and or up their damage. And so historically, at least when any games, MMOs that I have tweaked and been aware of, tanks have been a menace in PvP because in many ways they have less burst damage, but they have infinite higher survivability while having competitive damage. And
yeah,
basically it's like you have like a DPS player and then they're like sustains like here. Tank is like, okay, so like tank has like a little less damage, right? But their sustains like here. And ultimately, if you add the bar graphs out, tank value is just infinitely higher.
And even if it's not infinitely higher, it's still more boring. Like, you may as well play a DPS character because the DPS characters are more sharp. So, like, tanks can either appeal for their backline and their support in a more convincing way, in which case you just create a comp that is essentially harder to kill than the regular comp. Or tanks can move the enemy team around, in which case they basically move away, right? And I think the thing is, the wins of the tanks in PvP, the places where it has actually worked is specifically where the spec has been purposely toned down in PvP or made to work in a completely independent way of being a tank. It's been made basically into another DPS character by nerfs, buffs, or intelligent design by the devs. When we're talking about a tank, what is a tank in a game? A tank is in a game. I think the only thing that is actually similar between all games is just that they have bigger health bars. And that's what we're talking about for Overwatch, and I guess that's what we're talking about for PvP characters in World of Warcraft. The only other thing that I see as a commonality is that tanks should theoretically be less lethal. I'm just going to pop to the loo real quick. Game will always be played around cooldowns. All tanks do is reduce the number of sharp moments. Those sharp moments are still there. True, yeah. There's a way of balancing it. I'm not going to say you're wrong in any way, Ammon, but I think it's very, very knife edge to balance it properly. And I don't think many places do that properly. And I think the reason for that is that you don't have this fundamental thing of space control to make up for the idea that you are, by definition, less lethal. Okay, one sec. Okay, sorry. Let's go.
infinitely higher. Sometimes you even have the issue with the support class in PvP too, because again, if you're playing support, you have to play solo PvE for a large portion of the game, so there needs to be a damage line or damage class. But the problem is a lot of those still have some of the self-healing or a lot of the healing that they have in the normal healing line instead of these OP classes. So it's like tanks in PvP for a lot of these MMOs they're just raid bosses. They're just raid bosses. They're just raid bosses in a PvP environment.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there's some nuances
which is
definitely
rough.
to put in there, but
now,
for the most
does
part,
it have to be that way? True. But again, what do you do when you don't have when you can't force taunt the enemy? How do you balance that?
Positioning to even close to the same degree as Overwatch. The concept of tanking in a PvP game only seems to work if denying positioning makes a meaningful difference on your chances to win.
And that's the other thing too, is like the ability to tank only matters if you're creating space. But in a large portion of some of the PvP games that I played, the battlefields were not super well thought out, so that there was really not as much of a thing as a positional advantage, because a lot of it's like target character, press a button. You're not missing. It just hits. Now, I think other PvP games have done a better job of that, of like making certain space controls matter more, matter less, and so on. So it's a more of a realistic space control game. But in MMOs, like space isn't as important as it is in a first-person shooter.
You can build taunt into PvP. Swartor did it successfully. Can you get me a reference of that happening? Like, how does it work? Talk to me. Yeah, so 3 DPS comp can win versus a 1 DPS, 1 tank, 1 support team. Sure, yeah, of course. I mean, you can make them balance against each other, but is the tank experience really something people are going to select unless it's better as a preference in terms of gameplay without the implied ability to move people around in a more succinct way, which is what I'm saying. That what is replacing the lethality in the tank category is the fact that you can control space in a better way.
But if everyone controls space, what the hell is a tank then? Are they just big DPS who sometimes have mitigation, sometimes boot people,
to force someone to look at you,
sometimes have things like bubbles? Is the only common trait just that they're fat and can spend more time in front of standing on objectives? What's so wrong with Roadhog? Sharp.
And I think he's actually miffed as to where I'm going here. I'm not 100% sure how he's going to respond, but essentially I've said that everyone controls space. That's the only commonality. The only other thing is that tanks are bigger. So what the hell is the other thing that's making Roadhog bad?
My thoughts is that tanks have slightly better ways of absorbing attention for longer periods of time.
Yeah, that's how Spilo's responded to me in the past. He's specifically used that phrase, I'm pretty sure, to say that when I said Venture is a tank, he responded that, well, Venture can't absorb pressure. And I say, well, yeah, Venture can't absorb pressure. Of course they can't. But I'm not saying they're a tank in that way. What I'm saying is they're a tank in the way that matters, which is that they can absorb resources in order to do more in a meaningful way in terms of like close range pressure. I feel like tank haven't traditionally worked in MMOs because the devs and the PvP player base of those MMOs had no interest in making them work. I agree. No, that's fine. Basically, if you're taunted for like 6 seconds, you're taunting, you do less damage to any other target but the tank. Basically a mitigation cooldown with our big 15 versus 15 maps. You could need a couple of tanks in your team to manage taunts. In 3v3 Arena, it was not necessary, but it used to deal with certain enemy cooldowns. Sure, that's obviously a way to do forced taunt. Fair enough. Yeah. But that is, yeah, I don't know. I feel like without space control, tanks are really a lot lesser, because the whole idea of the fantasy of tanks in a PvE game is that they control the space on the thing. They control where things are. Like, that's the general idea.
All damaged heroes can take attention. Tank heroes can do so and survive the attention for a longer period of time, either through superior mobility, superior health pools, superior damage mitigation, and so on.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Venture doesn't do that, though, because the health is not big enough. Yeah, I mean, is there any other difference between Venture and a tank? Is Spilo just disagreeing because Venture doesn't have a big enough health pool? In which case, like, what are we really arguing? The only thing that actually makes a tank is a big enough health pool in order to exist and sustainability cooldowns to exist. Is that really how we're going to define it? Is the only thing that makes a tank just your ability to fucking stand on an objective? Because I'm going to tell you that Doomfist can't really stand on an objective for that long, and neither can Winston. And they're still tanks, so what are we talking about? It's the ability to softly pressure people out of space.
So on. In addition, oftentimes tanks utilize the psychology of proximity equals threat, so they're oftentimes closer range characters. Now,
that's a weird argument because it's A to B when really it's B to A. They are close range, therefore they utilize the proximity thing by necessity because they are in close range. But they don't necessarily need to be in close range, and they don't need to in general, be able to, like, go to closer range or utilize the proximity and the taunting by being bigger thing, because Roadhog's still a tank. Roadhog was always a tank. Roadhog doesn't utilize the close range thing. Roadhog is a tank specifically because of the ability to, well, the fact that he's bigger and theoretically should be the way that he does soft pressure. Like, why is Sigma a tank? He doesn't utilize the fact that he's taunting. He doesn't utilize the fact that he's big. He doesn't utilize the fact that he's close. But he's still a tank because he controls positioning. Doomfist or any other tank with no shield but has damage mitigation. Whole block and all projectiles and only projectiles will be redirected to that tank. Have that as an ult or long cooldown. Tanks should have defensive ult rather than ults like Sig and Ryan. Yeah, that's an opportunity for game design, certainly. That's not a bad game design. Got to head off. I'll see you around 10. Have a great evening. I'll see you around, dude. Come back on Sunday for 6v6 pugs. We have a Roadhog rework. Yay. This is very useful for engages. MMO PvP, there are different maps, different modes, like 3v3 arena play is very different than 20v20. Tanks are useful in these different modes in some way. Yep, flag carries, etc. Yeah, no, I agree with your reasoning there.
The question is, how far along the spectrum should they be before they get to be a little bit ridiculous, and that's where we have to kind of figure that out.
Volatility and telegraphing of damage sources.
And these are, it's interesting, and I think from all I've seen of him, and I haven't watched this back, especially this part, that he has no concept of this argument before I make it.
No, Tracer is not the off-tank. The off-tank is an enabler of the tank to control space while also controlling their own space. Tracer does not enable people.
Hey dude, he's stealing my terminology. He's using mine now.
She just controls her own space. Now, that indirectly might enable, but we talk about like what an off-tank does, whether it's a Zarya bubble or a Diva Matrix, it is directly helping the main...
He's using my terminology. Do you know how much I mind rotted this man?
...person takes space. It Tracer's strictly indirectly. So if anything, Tracer's another main tank, if that makes any sense.
Contributing factors to what's really important, and that's lethality. Sharp damage sources hit in bursts instead of gradually and kill from higher health totals. And Ashe hitting headshots is much harder to take.
I'm being nitpicky, but...
By the way, this edit's so ridiculously easy to do, this one behind.
Worthy talking point,
Volatile damage sources are unpredictable in their damage output, and Ashe will hit headshots some
I wonder if he engages with this.
Meaning that the incoming damage numbers can be hard to predict, and therefore are more likely to kill you in a ranged duel. Telegraph damage sources...
So let's go back a little bit.
Hitting headshots is much harder to take. Damage sources hit in bursts instead of
gradually.
What
Spino thinks of May. I wonder what he thinks of May tank.
Hitting headshots is much harder to take a ranged duel with without dying because the damage is coming in bursts of 150 as a headshot. Volatile damage sources are unpredictable in their damage output, and Ashe will hit headshots some of the time, meaning that the incoming damage numbers can be hard to predict and therefore are more likely to kill you in a ranged duel. Telegraph damage sources have a wind-up or tell, which allows you to react to the threat of them hitting you. The only tell for Ashe's hit scan damage being applied to you instantly at full damage with headshots is that the Ashe is able to see you. These three factors are what combines to make a DPS's damage.
I think this is a very good argument to show the lethality of Ashe. The two different cases that are exactly similar, that go to completely random outcomes. And the fact that two people have disrespected Ashe in exactly the same way. One time it was telegraphed, one time it wasn't telegraphed because Ashe was already there, so they might have known they were there. But this is what a DPS does.
Is very lethal. An end fight with one or another of the DPS is dying more often.
A new player that Tracer's technically a main tank would explode their brain. Yeah, I think explode their brain. Yeah, implode their brain. I think so.
There is volatile pressure from Reinhardt, in which I'm sure he'll bring this up. But the volatile pressure is what? So he's right. So there's
the volatile pressure is a little bit from Firestrike and his ability to pin.
Consistent, no surprises with the damage output. However, the volatile bursts that you do find in Junker Queen and Reinhardt is what? Range limited, yes, but also telegraphed.
Yay! He's got
Loud
that.
noise.
He's there. He's
Wind
already.
up. High risk, high reward. Investment of CDs. Proximity.
I didn't realize he'd get there before me. That's great.
Right.
I love that. Yeah.
Right.
Good job.
Even something as simple as a Diva Bomb, right? A lot of time to react to that.
No, don't. Rayless, don't argue that Venture's an off tank. He'll eat you alive. He'll hurt you if you argue that Venture's an off tank. By the way, this took me fucking ages. This edit took me so long.
With a small bump from his Firestrike, Zarya has a consistent damage source which increases linearly with her charge and requires.
I did pretty good show.
As the only volatility in the source. Winston has fairly weak, non-sharp pressure, and the only volatility in the ability is his jump and melee being able to put out burst damage. But importantly, for all these heroes, they have a much more telegraphed damage profile, which gives you.
This looks like it'll take ages. Yeah, so I had to make 3 different circles and make the go into the correct place, and then I had to I took that because I'm basically learning how to use the Fusion page on DaVinci. If anyone doesn't know, it's basically the ability to really in-depth edit one clip. So I had to motion track the entire section to the center of the character, and then I had to have like one more thing that highlighted the correct time and stuff like that. It was good, but it taught me a lot.
Well, telegraphed in terms of that, it's slower buildup of lethality. But I also want to clarify that in terms of the analogy that I'm using, telegraphed is not necessarily the slower, but there can still be burst damage. There can be volatility, but it's volatility that has warning signs. That's the crucial thing. It's not just that tank has a slower TDK.
You can have sharpness, volatility, or telegraph. You can't have all three.
But you can see it coming.
That makes you lethal.
You know it's coming. They're clear. Whereas Roadhog is at any point in time.
Yeah, I'm on.
All brawling time pressure has telegraphs which happen 3, 4, or 10 seconds before the pressure, because they have to walk their asses over to you to apply that pressure. All the dive tank pressure has had telegraphs because of their staging range to you, and do weaker, softer, or more time.
I'm working extra hard to fix his audio, by the way.
You can, when I'm coaching dive, I can often tell when a dive is about to be lethal based off the position the dive tanks have. Like you can feel the sense of dread before the successful dive happens, because you've already lost the space. You can already feel the proximity. You can already feel it. Whereas Roadhog, that you might not feel that sense of fear.
Everything in the game had been carefully
hard to see as a colorblind person. Darker color would have been good. Okay, I'll keep it in mind.
Constructed and balanced around these 3 factors: sharpness, volatility, and telegraphing.
That's fair enough.
To make it so that if a DPS wins a 1v1 fight, someone dies.
Why don't you just be born different, idiot? What, are you stupid?
But if a tank wins a 1v1 fight, unless people disrespect the space of the tank or forget to press their buttons, people move around, trade resources, and live. So, Roadhog. Hook is obviously one of the sharpest abilities in the game, nobody's debating that, and guarantees a kill if landed on almost any target. The only thing that can bail.
Well, see, that's why Doomfist was a fundamentally flawed character, because a lot of damage characters are more sharp in terms of their value, but Doomfist oftentimes there was no warning at all.
Yep, DPS Doomfist had too much health. That was the problem with DPS Doomfist, guys. He had infinite access to apply sharp pressure with low telegraphed, and therefore should have been very low health when he did it. Or should have had like some sort of reasonable counterplay to stop it in terms of stopping him getting in. Doomfist was, for the most part, completely overpowered in terms of what he could theoretically do at a high level if everything went well, just because he was so volatile in his output.
Like, not like, oh, there's this sightline. You didn't know where the sightline was, and that's why old Doomfist was really rough. A lot of fun, but really rough. But right now,
there was no sightline. Do you remember Numbani, where you could punch off of the truck on before Numbani first, before the door, to the right high ground on Numbani first on attack, and then kill them with a slam from up there? You could just like halfway across the map go combo someone, insta kill them, then get out.
Ball don't quite have that lethality, at least consistently, unless it has Empowered Punch, which is why that ability is really, really frustrating.
Yeah.
But at least with Doomfist Empowered Punch, there's at least some risk involved.
There's no risk involved.
Yes.
Not anymore.
Is kind of Suzu Lamp, Light Grip, DM, Bubble, that sort of stuff. But regardless of whether those are used, when remember they may not even be present on the team to begin with, the person can still die due to the displacement of the hook. It also stuns after contact, meaning that there's no personal counterplay whilst being hooked, breaking the ability.
Oh, I didn't realize there was a. I didn't make the effect big enough. It's not full. What? Video ruined. Guys.
Hook is also a
put it away.
So it sometimes does nothing, and sometimes a hard wall of guaranteed death, depending on how the Roadhog's feeling.
Yeah, see, that's it right there. It's the inconsistency, right?
Yep, volatility, and it's a. And I didn't want to front load this at this point, but it's a volatility between players, because sometimes people will be smurfing, sometimes people won't be smurfing. So it's purposely giving people false information on how much you should disrespect Roadhog's hook over time.
Better at controlling players' actions without hard stuns or mind.
Yeah,
Mal can do a lot of funny shit, like jump over some rooftops and Junkertown first.
Even between matches,
yeah, but he's not going to insta-kill you when he stomps you after.
Its pressure output. You might say, Ralph, sure.
Is this music the Ralph theme? I fucking love this music. Yeah, no, I love this one. This track is great.
Is slow enough to be reactable and blockable with abilities or walls, and Roadhog still has to be able to see you, be within 20 meters range, and has to have hook off cooldown. And yes, sure, All of this, you are...
That's a good point about the Smurfs. It might have got buried there, not made it back into the script, but I definitely at this point wrote that comment out of the script at this point to backload it later after I've made a different argument.
Right. But the fact that he
Undertale mentioned, love Undertale.
does have a moderate telegraph is complicated massively by the fact that he's a tank. In fact, I'm happy to argue that lethal pressure on a character like Roadhog is a fundamentally bad idea, which causes massive gameplay problems which are completely unsolvable.
And do you know that, guys? Do you know that little slip there? Lethal pressure. You see what I'm doing on a character like Roadhog. Sweet, 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 sweet. Shotgun, bang. Lead him down the path. Lead him down the path. Oh God, yeah. Because I'm purposely not mentioning that it's on a tank that's the issue. I'm mentioning that it's on a character like Roadhog. Yeah, so they don't get the warning signs yet. They don't know what I'm doing.
There's actually 5 untenable problems it introduces. So
Oh
let's go
gosh,
through
okay,
them.
I'm ready for it.
I fucked up the script here because I got the 5 problems and I went through the 5 problems, but I didn't list them while I was reading it out. So I just flubbed the
Given
editing.
to tanks makes a pressure zone or area of death if you stand here without using stuff uncertain or unpredictable, or at the very least requires more of the player in order to properly understand when and where they're allowed to stand. Overwatch is a hero-based shooter and therefore, needless to say, has a massive onboarding knowledge issue to begin with, especially when it comes to reading pressure zones from abilities. A great microcosm of the issue is when the top professional aimers used to come into Overwatch and get dumpstered by plat lobbies. This is a real issue for the game, and one of the main problems with hero-based shooters in general. When you don't have a proper understanding of ranges, abilities, heroes, game sense, that thing, the entire game...
Yeah, it was my bad on scripting random. I'd redo it if I could.
It feels pretty much arbitrary, and as some would say, absolute bullshit. With Ashe and Widow, people get it though. I stood on their sideline, I risked dying, I could technically kill them back if I was able to click them better. But people are a lot less forgiving when the stakes for them are certain death, and the stakes for the enemy are wait 7 seconds and give it another go.
Right, see, that's the thing, right? It does. There's less immediate direct feedback on when you make a mistake and when you don't make a mistake. And the other thing as well is that the difference between Ashe and Widow is what he said, is you can click them better in theory, right? With Roadhog, it doesn't matter. You're not going to kill him. Right. At best, he's going to overextend, but there's no real legitimate capability, especially post-rework, in actually securing the kill on that target.
I think it's a pretty clear straight line argument to say that in places where pressure zones through ability usage like Hook are volatile and more untelegraphed, we're going to be making this onboarding problem for new players a lot worse. I think the second...
I love that shot, by the way, that shot there.
Having a larger health pool gives him access to move around his pressure zones and therefore make them less consistent and readable for the enemy.
But that's it, right? That's it. There's no predictability. There's no sort of risk involved.
There you go. And you see me leading him there? He's agreeing with this specifically because it's Roadhog, but if I gave the general argument that if you have a tank with a higher health pool that has more ability to move around their hitboxes and stuff like that, then it creates the same problem. He would instantly have his back up against it. So I tried as hard as I could.
When Roadhog repositions himself like a Reinhardt, even within the tank role itself, like a Reinhardt pinning involves risk.
Hi, Peggy.
Right? There's a large portion of the field that Reinhardt can control, but it always involves risk.
It doesn't. Spilo, though, it doesn't involve that much risk, so does it nowadays? It doesn't really.
And there is audio cue to let you know that he's done so.
Problems with telegraphing and volatility. There is literally nothing more disempowering as a player than knowing about your death 4 seconds in advance and having nothing you can do about it.
I think this was a really, really strong point that I'm glad that I made early in this category instead of later.
Or being forced away from areas because you have to hedge your bets on a 30% chance you might die at random. This is a problem with sustain and interactability. There's 2 real possibilities here. Firstly, in the case where Roadhog doesn't have enough...
This is point 3, by the way. There was no segue whatsoever. If anyone's keeping track, this is number 3.
Resources to run across the field at will and hook someone around a corner, the player base is largely incentivized to shoot Roadhog to stop him doing his bullshit. In that case, the player of Roadhog is forced to largely be inactive, sit behind cover and fish off cooldown, which is boring.
Right.
The alternative case is that Roadhog has so many...
And the worst part about it is...
And he's not realizing that this is exactly the argument that I make for Reinhardt. In the absence of a Zarya bubble to force Reinhardt to go forwards or backwards, Reinhardt is either an unstoppable fucking killing machine that walks over your entire team if not enough people can shoot them, or literally does nothing. That is how it works. You either dump enough damage into him that he AFKs, or you don't, and he kills you, your family, your mother, your child, your unborn children that you may have in the future.
Because Roadhog, I know, I'm gonna get a little bit of mobility pulled here. Because Roadhog does not have mobility, the whole complexity of choosing which angle that you can rotate to, depending on the amount of attention that you're taking, is not something that you're able to do. With any other dive tank, when you are the focus of the enemy's team, whether it's deserved or not, There are choices and positions, chess, Sudoku, of like rotating and moving. With Roadhog, it really just becomes how long can I survive with this attention while still trying to at least threaten somebody with hook, even if it doesn't get the kill.
Sure.
There is no opportunity to reposition yourself. You just exist.
Resources and so much sustain that there's no real chance to ever burn him down. In which case, the player base is incentivized to, on the whole, just completely ignore him and largely just move away from the unstoppable monster going around and insta-killing people. So for the most part, Roadhog is and always has been balanced around this knife edge. Because if somebody picks higher damage to burn his health bar or picks...
I think you picture Ryan's ability to freely move around the map too much power. I think it works with Malga because his charge is fast and you get 50% damage mitigation. Ryan, though, is just a primary, so bomb from Junk during that charge and your armor is gone. Yeah, but Junk wasn't played as much or of a problem recently, until recently. I think Junk, especially at the start of the tank buffs, was played a lot less. The reason why people started playing Junk was specifically to move characters like Reinhardt into the inactive phrase. Junk was the Omega counter swap, like the only one left that people could use in order to stop the tank doing that absolute fucking bullshit. I think that's why people are on Junkrat right now, because they're the only character left that can actually hate on tank.
Specific abilities which interact with him well, such as Sleep Nade, Discord, Spear Rock, etc., he can be kicked immediately out of the second mode of bullshit and directly into the first mode of being completely inactive. So sure, Hook is telegraphed.
I wonder if he realizes right now that all of these arguments translate to every single other tank.
But the moment that Roadhog becomes unchecked in the game,
these cameras.
the telegraph just simply doesn't matter anymore, and he'll kill you anyway, anywhere you're standing. This feeds back again into volatility in his pressure. If he can go from stomp...
So either he's unkillable, so you should focus him, or you should focus him because you can't forget about a hook, and then it's like, which is it?
Hanzo hates on tank with Mercy, 300 HP headshot. Yeah, it is 300 HP headshot, but the headshot... is that with headshot reduction? Even then, what you have to think about is rapid fire is getting the repeated 10 armor reduction.
Right, which is it?
He's smiling,
and you can't even properly read their staging as threat. One of the first things that we talk about when I'm coaching DPS players when playing versus dive tanks is you rotate around the proximity of the brawl or dive tank and you gauge your position, their position as a priority about whether you should be shooting them or not. You take an angle, and as Ash, you need to know where Winston is. If Winston's far away, it's not really a priority. If Winston's close, then Winston's a priority, and you need to rotate and shoot accordingly. With Roadhog, his effective range is, it's not long distance, but because it's so indescribable, and then it's, you don't really know when and where Roadhog is an actual threat and when it's not.
A lobby to completely inert really damn fast due to specific hero...
Oh, by the way, this is still after the rework, where at least Roadhog was a consistent threat in mid-range. Now he's not.
Yeah, and I also didn't make this argument that putting the Pigpen on his kit actually increased the volatility in his damage output, because who the fuck knows if he's got the fucking Pigpen down? So people are getting false information from Smurf, they're getting false information from the times where people don't know how to play him properly, and... They're getting false information from just the general volatility and the hook actually being able to hit. There's so much false information here, not telling you exactly how much you should realistically be disrespecting the space that Roadhog controls, that people just walk into the fucking hook all the way up to plat all the time, and it sucks.
You might actually take 0 damage from a Roadhog because his primary fire at mid-range is so bad, and then get hooked from that range. And you're like, what? What? Like when an Ashe is shooting you, the damage is volatile, but she's consistently threatening at that range. Whereas a Roadhog, imagine if Winston did like zapping, and then he alt-fired you for like 200 damage. Like what? Like is this character close range or mid-range? I'm getting no there's no consistency of extrapolation, and it's also still super uninteractive with the Roadhog as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's pulling out the other examples right now. Exactly the thing I'm trying to lead him to.
How is a new person supposed to predict or deal with this pressure without feeling cheated? They simply can't. So what do new players do on average if the pressure zone seems inconsistent and therefore makes your death feel like complete bullshit? Especially in low ranks, what I've seen from thousands of reviews.
This is the part where I'm like, I'm hoping that people just side with me and stay on my argument, because this is a hard one to quantify, guys. This is a hard one to quantify, that people generally space out a little bit more in low ranks. This is a common sense line argument from what I've argued, but Will he follow it?
Is the obvious people just space further around it so that they're clearly out of the uncertain death area. And this naturally comes with all the standard negative effects of spreading out in Overwatch. It makes the game about who can win the straight resource trade on the target in front they can shoot. Something counter swap.
And I feel like I could have put a little bit extra of justification there in order to make sure people stayed on point, because I think that was the shaky logic leap.
All makes the game about waiting for sharp long-range spam damage to get another kill. And if sharp long-range spam damage is the main solution, the tanks and supports are necessarily cosmetic, and even the DPS don't enjoy the game. This is boring and tiring gameplay and plays exactly into the game's weaknesses. Nobody likes being forced to sit at 100 yards range waiting for kills. People like dynamic mid-range fights and...
Well, because you can't, you don't have any hand in play in terms of killing the character. There is no realistic way that you can actually contribute towards that character's death. So you have to feel the counter swap to a point. Upshot, thank you for the sub. You have to counter swap to a character where you do feel like you have a chance, and there's not many that can do that.
So he's just missed my point there. If I read this properly, what do people think?
Right. And that's why I've even had problems with something like a Wrecking Ball, where I like Wrecking Ball's design compared to
The point is you space out or you counter swap. That's the
Roadhog, but he still has too much HP and is still too fragile to CC. So Wrecking Ball is either getting blown up or Wrecking Ball's taking no damage. You get to choose.
Wasn't paying attention. Let's just assume you're right. Yeah. Even if you're doing no damage at far range but can still do some damage, people will just do it. Yeah. If there is an uncertain area, if there's a red, yellow, and a green, as Didac says on his diagram, if there's a red zone, a yellow zone, and a green zone, people ain't gonna... If this zone is a question mark, people are gonna stand here. If this zone is clearly red and this zone is clearly yellow, do you know what people will do? They'll move in from here and they'll stand here. And that just spaces out the game because people don't like random bullshit deaths. Isn't he making the same point? Let's rewind for a second.
Character. There is no
100 yards range waiting for kills. People like dynamic mid-range fights and...
Well, because you can't, you don't have any hand in play in terms of killing the character. There is no realistic way that you can actually contribute towards that character's death. So you have to feel the counter swap to a point. Upshot, thank you for the sub. You have to counter swap to a character where you do feel like you have a chance, and there's not many that can do that, right? And that's why I've even had problems with something like a Wrecking Ball, where I like Wrecking Ball's design compared to Roadhog, but he still has too much HP and is still too fragile to CC. So Wrecking Ball is either getting blown up or Wrecking Ball's taking no damage. You get to choose.
My argument says about my argument was about the things that enemy players do to deal with this, and I was specifically talking about non-counter swapping stuff, to just spacing out, and he's gone to counter swapping instead. So I feel like he's not fully connected with the argument. I'm not 100% sure though.
But really quick, at medium ranks, it becomes pretty clear that spreading out to avoid instant death mechanics is a really bad idea. You know, on Junkertown, where there's an attacking Widow and nobody ever takes a duel, nobody ever peeks cover, and you lose to her regardless despite her getting no kills because you control the entire map by existing. The actual answer to sharp volatile pressure isn't to entirely avoid the pressure, it's to call out periods of low pressure, challenge them at an advantage, and make sure they don't get free.
Right, finding moments of vulnerability. And remember, we talked about that. Where are the moments of vulnerability with Roadhog?
Be disrespecting Roadhog's hook to various degrees, because if you respect the 50% of hooks Roadhog spam to miss, you've given up 100% of the space for free. So there's an incentive here to play within the hook range, properly around cover. There is the classic response people give. Just get
interesting that he lets that all slide. Your point is more nuanced, he gets it in a basic way. Yeah, I think so.
Better start predicting the pressure.
And I think that's my problem, definitely, in terms of communication there. I clearly needed to space this out and provide more context and slow myself down to the point where I could respect this, or I needed a change of pace in the video in order to keep him on track. And I'll try and notice that. I feel like this is also brain drain from the fact that I did the 5 points and then gave off on the 5 points as well. Yeah, I'm a bit questioning as to whether that was my fault.
Start tracking cooldown, start seeing what he...
Because that is half the reason why I'm watching this, in order to be able to make these better in the future.
Can't get away with. But to start with, there's obviously at least one person on the battlefield who doesn't really have that option. Roadhog, because of the extreme sharpness of the ability, has always been a tank buster. Not necessarily in terms of the ability to break through armor anymore. In fact, the new recent breakthrough of the dev team in reverting the armor back to the old Overwatch 1 version, where it reduces damage from pellet type weapons more, is a welcome change. I mean, one might wonder if it might have actually originally been that way for a good reason.
It's a bad change.
It's a bad change? He thinks that the pellet change is a bad change? Interesting.
It's a bad change.
In my opinion, the characters were purposely designed around the fact that pellet types were reduced in damage more, because pellet type weapons have to be at closer range in order to do the duels. The only way to incentivize the pellet type characters to shoot the DPS instead of the tanks is to give them more effective damage against the DPS, so that they are rewarded for the fact that they have to get into closer range in order to do that, when they can shoot the tanks a lot more safely. Because if you're at closer range, you are necessarily less safe. Therefore, you'll default onto the thing that's easier to shoot. So he has a vid on ArmorNet rework where the effect is also reversed. Interesting. I really don't like 30% of the flat reduction. I think that is actively bad for the game. It was 5 points per bullet for a reason at the start, and I think the 10 points per bullet has cracked that reason to a place where it's not great. But yeah, I can't remember the exact point. He has a more complex system for armor. Okay, yeah, we'll take that as read. Maybe I'll find it.
It's a bad change. I disagree with Ralph here. I already had my discussion on the topic. It completely opens up Tank's vulnerability to higher damage out pools characters, which is ironically the type of characters that are sometimes the most frustrating to play versus. But yeah.
Okay, so if he's unhappy about that, why don't we just do 10? So why don't we just say 50% maximum reduction and then 20% minimum reduction? What's wrong with that? Like, what's wrong with this? So you say 10 or less per bullet, you get 50% reduction, and or 20 or less if we're going to use the new system, and then at like 100, you get a 20% reduction. Like, that was legit what the video is? Okay, cool. Yeah, I think the flat 30% is actively ridiculous, personally. And that's just me independently coming to the same conclusion as him, probably because it's a correct conclusion to make, quite frankly. If it's this, then this, then this, and this. He does not have a problem with ARM being really hard to understand, because people do not understand it as it is now anyway. Yeah, so it looks to me like they simplified armor to make the armor mechanics easier for a new player to understand, but they did that at the same time as they overcomplicated pretty much everything else in the game compared to Overwatch 1. So I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, guys? It was working that way for a reason. Maybe it wasn't perfectly implemented, but a flat 30% reduction is absolute horseshit. Yeah, sure. If you don't think the Hanzo damage gets reduced by enough, just put it onto a higher percentage instead of a flat reduction. It's not that hard, right? Have the mid-level scale, and then yeah.
Before it's arbitrarily changed to 30%.
Doesn't really matter.
And I also don't know that I 100% agree that Roadhog has always been a tank buster necessarily. It's because he was situational in tank buster for.
Nah, he's always been a tank buster if he can hit a hook on a tank. Every single time he hits a hook on a tank, he becomes a tank buster instantly.
Sure, but he did have moments of vulnerability back in the day. Like, it's hard to believe, but a Roadhog without vape and hook could, in theory, die to a Reinhardt before. Like, not immediately, but there's a possibility.
No, I will not say Hanzo like that. Armor's always felt a little accidental. I agree. I agree that it probably was accidental, but there was logic behind the first implementation. I feel like the way in particular it was implemented is absolutely arbitrary, but the logic behind it is sound. That close range characters have to have an incentive to shoot something other than the tank because they are at risk when they're shooting. Therefore, they need some sort of reason not to just shoot the thing that prevents the risk.
There, you know?
When Overwatch 2 was released, but if I'm going to start listing the arbitrary changes for Overwatch 2 which have been reverted, we'd be here all day. Let's hope they revert one more change. The point is, if landed on a tank...
I didn't get him. I thought he'd smile at that
more
one.
than if landed on a DPS, hook guarantees
As they come out, yo, you.
a fight win simply due to the displacement. In order to withstand a landed hook, you either need some sort of infinite damage block, such as Sigma or Diva, or enough movement in your kit that you can counteract the displacement from the hook. Especially the Brawl tanks Ram, Junker Queen, Reinhardt, Zarya, in particular, are screwed by such a sharp ability. So you might say, Ralph, nobody needs to block the hook with an ability. Walls are shields, you dummy, and sure, but that's just skipping the problem. Because you're right, I can play around the hook, literally.
Hopefully at this point he engages with the fact that, like, I'm talking about low level. But I think, honestly, I've clearly paced the video wrong, and I've lost him in part.
Get you, but that ignores the fact that using cover appropriately is one of the most difficult things to learn in the game.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Good point. First-person shoot fundamentals should not be so oppressively important that you are unable to enjoy the game at its base level versus certain characters, because it removes the skill curve of the game and introduces a skill shelf where you're unable to enjoy the game until you check that box, at least to a decent degree.
Yeah. No,
represents a
100%.
really high skill. And what are we even talking about here? Is being forced to stand behind a wall every single time the hook is off cooldown, or else flirt with an instant death mechanic, really something that's good gameplay in the first place? And if you don't want to stand behind a wall, and instead, I don't know, want to contest an objective maybe, which I've heard tanks sometimes do like to do,
I got
you're
it!
forced to
I
hold
got
mitigation
it!
abilities and
He
block the
is
hook,
mine.
creating a stalemate situation.
He is
Okay, have you
mine
ever
and
played that
he's
gladiator game where you have a beam
beautiful.
that you're on and a double-ended bone stick to hit the other person off with? People very quickly realise, and I very quickly realised, that attempting to hit the other person off the
Okay, she's
beam
gone.
is almost always the incorrect choice.
I pulled out my
because
cable
it
again.
destabilizes you so much. And you always end up with one smug bastard against you who just waits for you to throw yourself off balance.
Loser. Plus one cat, yeah.
If you play long enough, you both start learning that standing there and not doing anything is commonly the best option. If the enemy's on Roadhog, you either play touch and cover or stalemate with
So this is my stalemating argument.
abilities, being completely inactive and literally
Yeah, I just haven't separated these out into their own I need a break between these
just
sections.
waiting for our DPS to do something interesting. The game is slow, boring, you do
The
nothing.
only difference between Hook and Widow one-shot is the fact that Widow is more consistent in her threat. Hog is inconsistent in his threat. And
are?
then Widow has counterplay and more obvious
I feel like Widow and Hog are just as inconsistent, but sure.
counterplay, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
In more circumstances where Hog's counterplay is non-existent and it's just simply if he misses the shot, he doesn't get value.
And this is the part where it gets a little grating, and this is why scripting these things is so difficult for me, because I am currently explaining these concepts to somebody that doesn't play Overwatch, and it's really difficult to explain it at a pace that Spilo's happy with as well, because he's implicitly getting what I'm talking about instantly once I start the topic, and the next 10 seconds is white noise for the most part.
Dopamine off of
Unless
punishing
he's gonna like overtly
the Hog
agree with it for funsies.
missed the hook. It's just, well, let's hope he misses again. And comparing Hog and Widow, and while they are similar in some ways, like especially a Widow on a good map,
You get interrupted by a raid.
Widow
Goes
is
to
also a
rails.
really crappy character.
I saw it had a shitload of viewers.
Also
Who
a
did you
really
get raided
crappy
by?
character. Like Hog and
He had
Widow
loads of
are
viewers when I,
toxic
saw him
in
at the
similar
end.
fashions, yes.
thing, and then if you miss up once, you die instantly. All you can do is sit and wait. So I'd be completely remiss to mention at the moment that all of these problems with Roadhog
This is when he gets
I've already
angry with
stated
me.
are completely and utterly compounded by the swap to 5v5. One of the effects of tanks which are kind of underrepresented.
Remember my thoughts on 5v5. Yes, he's right. This has been worse in some aspects, but it also means that in 66, you were not only held hostage by Roadhog's design if you were playing versus a Roadhog, but also your ability to take space, create space, and make space as a tank was significantly limited based off of your Roadhog's ability to hit hooks. There was
Okay, so he's saying that, yeah, it's bad one way, but it's bad the other way as well. I'm saying the design is limited. He's saying it had bad effects on the game. I'm saying that Roadhog's design is worse in the 5v5 format. And yeah, sure, there are separate problems with both formats. I get that. I think it is hard for me because I've obviously done the Roadhog rework project and actually fixed it. So yeah.
There's no value off of your tank even providing any sort of indirect mobility at all. So Roadhog kept his team, did not keep the enemy team hostage as much because he was more punishable. But in Overwatch 2, he keeps his team, or Overwatch 1, he kept his team more hostage through his own incompetence.
Like, you stop going in my computer. You're going to
nowadays
get the
is their
fans and
ability to
shut
simply
down the
stabilize and
stream.
even out sharp pressure. Spam damage from Junkrat, Fire Symmetra, and chokes, which players had to walk through whilst being spammed, used to be a major part of the game previously. And whilst we all agree this was terrible design space, previously the two tanks
I feel like I may have stayed on this for too long, but I think it's a good thing to twist the knife on here.
mitigate the worst of it. Sharp pokey damage was also shut down massively by tanks, Widow and Hanzo in particular, because even if you ignore the extra ability mitigation in the game, at its base level in a random ranked lobby, if you have two guys that might do something like shut down a Widow, it's more likely to happen more often. This was, by the way, one of the reasons people wanted Reinhardt's shield to stand behind Widow in the game, at its base level massively by tanks, Widow and Hanzo in particular,
rewinding?
because even if you ignore the extra ability
Wait,
sharp
see.
pokey damage was also shut down massively by tanks, Widow and Hanzo in particular,
Interesting.
because even if you ignore the extra ability
No.
mitigation in the game, at its base
Yeah.
level,
Widow Hanzo was only shut down if you didn't have the space. If
Which is what tanks create? What? What? What are you on about? What are you on about, dude? Are you just disagreeing for some reason? What? Anyone know what Spilo's getting at here?
If you did have the space, Widow Hanzo were not exponentially, but more powerful because it was harder to contest the space because the value of chokes, the defensive advantage of two tanks was more than the offensive advantage of two tanks. In other words, having two tanks
So you're saying Widow on defense was more oppressive, but Widow wasn't really a problem with chokes in general. Widow was more of a problem with wide maps on defense. Widow on defense generally wasn't that much of an issue, especially at low to medium ranks.
Tanks in a good
And he's saying that tanks can reinforce Widow on an angle and make them unmovable. And I think that's true, but
position
sure.
was more powerful than having
It's a lot of
one
resources.
tank in a good position. And we learned this in our 6v6 bugs, no matter whether you have double shield or not. Widow goes from being absolutely awful. So in 5v5, Widow is stronger on attack situations.
Yeah, maybe. In 5v5, Widow's stronger on attack situations. Is that true? And then, obviously, on the second sentence is of 6v6, Widow stronger on defensive situations. Is Widow stronger on defensive situations in 6v6 than attack? Why would that be? Widow is only stronger on attack when it comes to the first points hybrid. Isn't Widow stronger on attack or defense more dependent on the map layout than the comp? I think so.
In 6v6, Widow is stronger in defense situations.
Yeah, so yeah, I was right. Well, I feel like I just need a lot more explanation as to what his reasoning is here. Reason being spawn distance? Well, if the reasoning's spawn distance, then Widow would be stronger on attack on both. And Widow's ability to get picked, she'd be unilaterally stronger on attack.
If that makes sense.
Random ranked lobby. If you have two guys that might do something like shut down a Widow,
I don't know. I'm not connecting with the argument, so I don't want to say yes or no.
it's more likely to happen more often.
Whatever
This
the
was, by
argument
way,
is.
one of the reasons people wanted Reinhardt.
Because you also have another body to prevent the other person from shutting down the body. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, so he's saying that the tank can reinforce Widow's angle. But if a Winston jumps a Sigma and a Widow, the Widow's still got to unpeak the angle. Like, that's just how it works, and you're throwing one person into two people. If they want to work together and reinforce each other's angle, yeah, it's hard to deal with, but as well, you've got a lot of resources in the wrong place, so you can actually rotate around and capitalize on something else. We're talking about a general chaos of low-ranked, where people won't reinforce each other's angle, and people will occasionally jump on the person if they can. I think this is I think this is one of those arguments where he's arguing for like mid to high rank, and I'm arguing for low rank, but I'm not sure. 6v6, you lose a teammate, you can keep pushing. 5v5, attack, you're shut down. Yeah, I don't think it's to do with the advantage. I think it's to do with the ability for the tanks to reinforce the Widow's position and stop them dying. But I don't see how that's less or more on attack versus defense. I think that's
Like, I have another tank that deny them from being able to shut down the Widow.
Yeah, but sure, yeah, but Widow. So first off, Widow will be playing from different ranges than any tank that wants to be shut down, right? Widow's going to play for a slightly longer range, so first off, the tank's less useful if they are paired with the Widow. And can't help but think of a swap to Widow on defense or last point Kings. Yeah, it's hard.
There was a lot more sharp.
I'm not sure
damage in the game, and community education.
I need to think about this more in order to be able to say
So they
anything.
didn't know bullshit.
Ralph.
Community education old like don't look at portals. But that doesn't stop the truth that having less tanks on the field means that there is both less checking of the enemy Roadhog's positioning and less checking of the Hook's ability to access backlines and kill once it has accessed the backline.
I think that checks out.
I won't spill more ink on this topic, I'm moving on. As with all extreme design,
Yeah, in 5v5, there's less chances to check the Roadhog, and there's less things that can check the Roadhog. There's less people that can check the Roadhog in terms of positioning, there's less people that can peel for the Roadhog. I think that checks out. Maybe I counteract my own argument in future by saying that Roadhog is mostly mirrored, but... Well, you say that, Arkham, but I immediately tried to counter with something that I might have said that is incorrect with the things that I said in the future. So at least I'm being consistent.
it's like
Curious
Widow,
what his thoughts are on
Hands
the
of
rework.
Roadhog. All of the areas of the design space which were always somewhat problematic in 6v6 have often, without significant tweaks, become unhealthy in the current format. So yeah,
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, Spilo's not just randomly saying words, he's saying proper arguments. I'm just not connecting with the argument.
6v6, she might be worse overall, but there were windows of opportunity the second tank make the Widow look at her for a little bit. Yeah.
In 6v6, she might be worse overall, but there were windows of opportunity if the second tank makes the Widows look at her for a little bit. Yeah. It's pretty much the argument that you can either move the Widow or you can shut out the Widow with barriers and shields.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I really think it's a give and take. You know, I think objectively, Widow was a lot easier to stuff out in 6v6 when you didn't have space, for sure. Whereas in 5v5, it's a lot harder to stop a Widow from taking an angle.
the character has
It's harder to stop them taking an angle. It's harder to get them out of the angle once they get there because you have to throw more resources at them to do it.
eliminate problems due to the lethal pressure design generated 8 years ago, which have always had negative ramifications on the gameplay. And these problems have been compounded with the swap to 5v5. So, we got a full rework. Yay! Let's knock a couple of the easy aspects out. Due to other parts of this kit being terrible to play against and the character now needing to do
Do you like my shameless stealing of Karku's Roadhog video in the background, just sped up so it's not straight stealing?
like contest points and generally stand out in the open in 5v5, quite a lot of the power in his kit.
This is the point where I mostly gave up on editing. I was like, fuck it.
Exists. We all know
I think it
why
fits though,
sustainability
really
is
well.
bad.
So he's basically saying in 5v5 there's one fewer tank to take attention, so you need a tank that has a little bit more direct mitigation because you could be the source of attention more often. And that is true. But every other tank has been able to do that significantly better and mostly just fine with the exception of off tanks, and that's a longer story. You can't put lipstick on a pig. It's just still a pig.
All you have to do is look at
Sure.
the other tank rework, and you get the point. Unkillable heroes are uninteractive, and infinite sustain is possibly the worst type of power to ever give a hero.
Yes.
I mean, Breather has, over the years, gone from a root with no damage reduction, to being able to use it freely whilst walking, to being able to use it freely with damage reduction, to now being able to use it freely whilst on a meter with damage reduction without it being interruptible. I'd argue that this aspect of the rework, combined with the same treatment for Whole Hog, have somehow managed to make the design of one of the worst designed heroes in the game directly worse. Naturally, with
Still busy doing real work while Rope is doing react content like a cringe lord. So mad. Oh, I just don't have any content brain, so I can't make content. I'm just useless at this, Spilo. Please save me. Real work, Spilo coming away from his real work in order to shit post in my chat. I know you love me. You can just propose already. It's okay. It's fine. You can just do it. It's okay.
more
I mean, we live in different countries, so it's going to be a little bit awkward, but you know.
sustainability,
Not
more
responding
ability
to
stand
that.
on point, but more ability to walk into your backline and hook someone minding their own business.
Can't hear what he's saying because he's dumb. You're dumb!
And Breather is definitely a prime suspect for that. But Whole Hog now does one thing and one thing only. Delete the enemy tank on cooldown, barring DM grabs and a couple of
Yes.
other
Excellent.
It just guarantees a
Excellent
kill.
point.
The reason for this change is easy to see. If you have Whole Hog and they have Rock, Spear, or another stun, you literally cannot use it. So the fight turns into another ability stalemate.
It was a bad cooldown because it only did one thing and it was super easy to counterplay, like Vape.
Is that the Spilo? Yeah, it's some guy. I don't know who he is.
Now it doesn't have any counterplay, but it still does exactly the same thing. It's like saying, oh, this ultimate is bad. This ability or ultimate is bad because it only does the one thing. We should make it impossible to stop. That'll make it better. No.
I don't think there was anything else to do with Whole Hog.
Oh.
I think Whole Hog was an untenable issue.
No. It's like saying, man, that Star Wars movie is really unpopular. People
me
keep
going
walking
insane.
out of the
I
theater.
always-
Let's tie them to their seats so that there's fewer people walking out of the theater. No! That's not...
You know what, guys? Spilo is so weak, he couldn't make a rubber duck quack with a hammer. That's how puny Spilo's arms are. He's disgustingly weak.
That's not why. That's like watering the sidewalk to make it rain. You know, like no.
The other player's stun
Yeah,
will just
true,
get held
Spilo.
forever until inevitably you use it and get stunned out. Before, the stalemating issue was less extreme because Roadhog in 6v6 was an off-angler, meaning you could use the ult in place of where the stuns weren't, or alternatively, you had another tank who can give you...
That is actually a good point. I will say in 66 the ult made a little bit more sense because you weren't necessarily
Interesting that he connects on the ult, but he doesn't connect on the heal. Like 6v6 was better. Sorry, the heal was better in 5v5, 6v6, and the ult was better in 6v6.
sitting on the tank all the time. If that makes sense. Like you were on the off angle, like you're like, okay, well then how do I off angle if I'm contesting a DPS? I mean, I agree. That is a very good.
God, I miss Horizon Luna Colony so much. Look at this masterpiece. What an animal. Jesus Christ. What a beautiful map. I do miss it as well.
Point.
protection during the ult. But nowadays, the best way to prevent Roadhog one-hitting your entire backline, if you're the enemy tank, is to mirror him.
He likes your criticism, but not your solution. Yeah, that's
Stay
fair
on
enough.
his angle. This means that Roadhog is almost, by definition, on main the majority of the time, and on main, you can't dodge the stuns. When
Well, he's on main. Remember, he's on main for two reasons. Two reasons, not just two reasons, but two important reasons. Is number one is because of the vape change, which has allowed him to be able to play much more like a.
Well, you said that all tanks need to be able to stand on point, Spilo. That was your main reason why things are tanks.
Brawly tank with
So you're saying he was a tank before, or is he a tank now? Is he more of a tank now? Question mark.
zero counterplay. And then the other reason
your
is
original
that
point.
because they've removed alt fire, your impact from medium range is significantly lower. At least it's significantly more.
True, Altfire is a travesty that is gone. I would have made the argument, but I didn't think it would fly well with the audience, quite frankly. So I didn't make it as strongly as I might have.
Sammy.
I touched on it, but I didn't
So
stay
in
on
my my mind, Blizzard's fix was the
Hope you're doing well,
obvious path to least resistance. Making Whole Hog and Breather just not interact with their worst counters solved the stalemating issue. But again, this reduced the interactability of the game and made Whole Hog a one-size-fits-all to leave the tank ability. I think the question to ask is, was there another fix here? And my answer personally is pretty simple and pretty sad. There really wasn't much else to be done.
Oh no, Ralph, you're supposed to save me. I didn't have any ideas either.
Not for Whole Hog. I have the idea of going back to 6v6, so it's not an issue. This is a design space limitation, Spilo. That's the problem. You can't. It is a limitation for the format that stuns cannot be avoided by the main tank. Therefore, they need to not interact with the stuns as strongly as they did before. You cannot make characters that interact with the stuns very strongly because then they have significant counter swap potential.
No! This character has to be deleted. Delete Roadhog!
Channel tank ultimates which need constant LOS with the enemies in order to get their value. Need some other way to stop stuns interacting with them.
Yeah, the loud equals funny. Classic Spilo response.
When you remove the other tank. This problem is so intractable that even non-tanks are being mirrored by the stuns and don't have to be in melee range to use their channeled abilities, e.g. Moira's Coalescence, have now had these type of changes too. As always when discussing 5v5, yet another region of regular design space have been rotted out and made unhealthy by the more simplified format. There's no real other...
Come on, drink the water. I've led you here. Drink it. Drink it. Yes, the ult was the ult is worse in 5v5. Yes, the breather is worse in 5v5 because it has to be. Drink the fucking water, Spilo.
fix for this.
Oh, don't sneak that in there.
Yeah, I'll sneak it in there. That's where you are. You got let here. Now drink the fucking water.
I hate when he does that.
It was a good horse. Because he didn't say no, did he? He just said he hates it. Yeah, there you go.
I'm gonna take Ralph in one. By the way, I'm working on this.
Yeah, I guess he's right technically. Yeah, shut up and drink.
66 script. Dude, it's gonna be a doozy. I've already spent like 45 minutes on that son of a gun.
45 minutes? This cost me like 60 hours of my life on scripting, Spilo. What the fuck? 45 minutes?
We're gonna have all the sauce, man. We're gonna have all the sauce. I
45 minutes?
really had fun playing 6v6, honestly, guys. Like it was great fun. I'm very confident that, like,
Yeah, because it's a better game mode, you pleb.
like no matter what format we do moving forward, like it's gonna be fun. So I'm gonna give you my full thoughts, like the full breakdown of upsides and downsides and like things that they're gonna need to do if it's 6v6. It was good.
Yeah, just copy and paste FSJQS into the workshop code, my code, and it'll work perfectly. You believe more than 45 minutes? My video is 43 minutes with some rambling at the end. Shut up.
My 6v6 head down. I'm not really either. My personal strategic.
The benefit of the problem, but he won't commit to saying that one is better. No, I'll never get him because he's very non-committal.
Strategic preference is 5v5, and I don't like when people try to pretend that 5v5 is less strategically complex because it's just objectively not true.
Strategically, no, but gameplay loop, yes.
But I also
no, I agree with him. I think they're about the same in terms of strategic complexity in general, yeah.
definitely see a lot of the major flaws with 5v5, and some of which I don't think are solvable. But I also...
Get off the fence! It must hurt!
There's some flaws with 66 that I don't think are entirely solvable as well, so it's like, it's really like pick your poison.
I have apples here, I have apples here. Apples? I mean, apples to apples and apples to apples. I could not possibly say whether these apples are bigger than these apples, or these apples weigh more than these apples. I mean, I've got apples in both hands, guys. Let's not talk about it.
Poison.
Yeah.
And I also don't think we really know which one, like which of those flaws is easier to just ignore.
I do, because there are specific areas of game design, like abilities that interact badly with stuns on tanks that cannot be made in the 5v5 format and therefore have to be designed out of the game. Whole Hog as an ultimate does not work in the current format, but worked perfectly in 6v6 in whatever janky way it did. Every single character that is slightly problematic in 6v6 is much worse in 5v5 in general.
And live with.
God.
I don't think we really know right now like which of those is, so I'm just...
Yes, we do. 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 Yes, we do.
It's open for testing on either one, and that we did a lot of that the last few weeks, so...
issue than reworking or changing the ultimate. So let's just add that to the pile of Reworks Blitz of the...
Did he see this? Like you were released 16 months ago? I thought
Here's what I don't like. I don't like when people be like, 5v5 bad because see what they did with the Hog rework? Yeah, see, they had to just do this. Like, but it's the same lazy argument that says a 6.
No, it's an example of the rotting out of the design space that is no longer valid in the format because of the format. If they had to rework Hog Ultimate because it does not work, then the design space is limited on specifically being able to put Hog Ultimate in the game. That's how it fucking works. If you can't make something like a character with 0 mobility on the support category be healthy, then it's not fine. It means there's less things you can create as a broad spectrum in the game. Zen should be able to exist in a non-knife-edge format of being completely overpowered or completely useless without having mobility. It should be a thing you can design, but you can't theoretically design it.
66 was bad because double shield. It's like, it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? That's just, that's like, it's not intentionally lazy, but Relth is better than that.
Oh, fuck off. No. Yeah, call me lazy for leading you to water, making you drink, and you being like, oh, I don't like this water. Shut up, Spilo, and drink.
Have now had these type of changes too.
Come on.
As always, when
Oh, yeah. I led, what, point 1, point 2, here's point 3. I don't like point 3, and it's lazy that I got here. Shut up.
discussing 5v5.
When's the 1v1 happening?
When's the 1v1 happening?
There's no real other fix for this issue than reworking or changing the ultimate. So let's just add that to the pile of reworks Blizzard are never going to get around to for their new format. The primary fire rework was all
Is he going to 1v1 me? Oh, it's Yeet in the chat. It's Yeet in the chat.
interesting, but a bit of a watch by the whole. The left and right click previously being split.
Very nervous laugh, Spilo? Nah, dude.
Very nervous laugh.
Nah, dude. I'm so confident. You see this this is the face of a confident person. See how confident I am?
Scared.
Very confident. The most confident. There's confidence, and then there's me, and then I mean, sorry, way up here, you guys don't need to see. So really confident.
No, Yeet let him to say the words 1v1. I don't think he challenged me, but I accept. I accept. Spilo couldn't 1v1 his way out of a fucking paper bag. He is a useless wash streamer that doesn't play the game specifically because he can't get over plat. That's my argument. Shut up, Spilo. You can't 1v1 for shit. Fight me.
Created a healthy skill curve to play the character, and the rework removed that depth, making it easier for players to abuse Roadhog at a low level. But the rework did also tackle problems with the volatility of Roadhog's
As I said, could not make a rubber duck squeak with a hammer.
damage, because he used to randomly get skillful insta-kills when the right click just so happened to line up with a character's head by accident. It was important to remove the dead
Hey, he was diamond. Are you a diamond magic? Shut up, Placid. You're going to be on my side. Shut up.
between right click and left click when transitioning to solo tanking, but I do personally miss the old fire mode, so let's move on. The real interesting part of the rework,
I'm not biting my
in the
nails.
first place, is the big head. The stated top goal of the rework as a whole was as follows.
I'm surprised you didn't talk more about all fire. I know like the random kill aspect was, but like man, like losing your choice of
Yeah, no, fair enough.
positioning dynamics.
As I said, 2 pages removed.
Thanks to the raid, Luca go.
The broad goal of the Roadhog rework was to improve his frontline presence on the battlefield as a tank hero and reduce the frustration enemy players
React Flat's reaction to 5v5. Yeah, I'm probably going to watch that at some point. I've been intending to.
had.
Dude, I have been
Improve
intending
his
to.
frontline presence. Oh!
Literally, what the fuck does it mean? Does anyone know what that meant? That he generally had more stuff to do in the front by having a trap in the general area? Like, what does that mean?
Oh, that is as good as the what was it? The Ramatra, the first
It's funny, like, I can't make him laugh, but the devs sure can make him laugh with what they say.
tempo tank, man. Ay.
How consistently deadly his hook combo has been.
Frontline presence, man.
Despite the fact that the stated goal of the rework was to, quote, improve his frontline presence, instead I prefer to focus on the rest, and the complete and utter failure of the rework to do what really mattered, which clearly was to reduce the frustration enemy players had.
I'm not happy with that edit, by the way. You look at that edit, did it reduce? How it moves slightly? I caught this in post.
Which clearly
You look at this edit. Look at up here. It slowly move over. Didn't intend to do that. I'm upset about not being able. God, that's that irritating. It's the kind of thing you watch back in post and you're like, shit. I'm not re-rendering it. I'm not doing it.
Frustration enemy players had with how consistently deadly his hook combo has been in the past. And if there's any one part of the rework that may have been designed to do that, it's clearly the pigpen. Their description of the logic for pigpen is here. Quote, this enables Roadhog to have control over a wider area and with a little bit of pre-planning can be used to either help.
Is he okay?
Hello, Boger. Thank you for the raid.
Fucking hell, he got raided by 1,300 people.
We're busy losing our minds.
Was he just screaming when they came in?
We talked for a long time, like 40 minutes, about my problems with Roadhog, and then now we're looking at another video about somebody else
seem
talking
serious
about why
about it.
Roadhog is bad, and then a Winston player jumps in. I guess you're officially now a Junkrat player. How's Diamond 4 treating you, or was it Plat 1 now?
Let's skip this. I'm gonna guess he talks to them for a little bit, as I would if I was raided by 1,000 people. Bogo, if you want to raid me right now, that's absolutely fine. I'm just doing terrible React content to Spilo.
We'll continue.
If Bogo wants to raid me, that's cool by me. So let's get to that.
You're looking less handsome today? No.
He's not live.
Do you not understand like what I'm saying here? Can you not?
If Bogo wants to drop 1,000 people into my chat, I'll immediately stop doing anything and start just running ad after ad until they're all gone.
I'm sorry.
That'll be my stream. Well, guys, I'm off. Ad time.
Sir, can we please continue the video so we can continue your amazing genius commentary? You're stretching it a little much, but you're on the right track. You did it wrong, Bird. You spelled it wrong.
What's happening?
Better, but you missed the P that I'm
Okay, I can scroll.
Split the ability into two parts. First, make the instant kill combo not possible by moving the.
Yeah, I'm on 7. Go for it.
Where they're pulled in. Secondly, make the other part of the combo the trap.
I'm just reacting to people reacting to me.
Be able to do the instant kill.
Man, I did this and I was like, I'm not re-recording it. I'm not re-recording a clip of Roadhog further away from the pig pen. I'm just gonna say the pig pen's there. Fuck it. I'm not.
This, in theory, solves a couple of problems. So tell them.
My idea was that when he's away from the pig pen's yellow and the hook's yellow. When he's close to the pig pen, the hook is red and he's red. That's the idea. Okay, guys, you get it. You get the idea. I don't need to actually do it properly. I think I fucked it up in general, yeah.
The hook combo is active or a telegraph, meaning that not only does Hog have to set up trap before hooking.
7 versus 7 video.
But you can avoid
I was convinced the
Maybe,
Platts
yeah.
wasn't going to focus on the 7 versus 7 when he said it originally.
I'm not a React streamer!
concept. Roadhog has a hero
We'll skip that.
involves a one-shot hook combo. In fact, every time you remove the one-shot hook combo, people stop playing him. And this change allows you to, in theory, keep his identity whilst making that hook a lot more telegraphed in a world where ways to stop it or play around it are a lot fewer. You get to have your cake and eat it too. A less sharp, less volatile, more telegraphed version of the hook.
I like the
still
hard
has
stop here in the
one-shot which
video,
top
by the
players
way.
love, still
think I did
has
quite
all
well
the
with
hero
that.
fantasy and
Good
tank,
transition.
stops his limitless access to space.
You know what Roadhog players like as
I'm making
well?
a full argument
Glue.
for the trap.
I don't give a frick what Roadhog players like.
He's making other players like hell.
So what the hell went wrong? Because we're 2 years later and Hog can one-shot again without the trap.
Well, the first problem is telegraphing. Pigpen as a
Leave them
telegraph
somewhere,
hook
hit them in the head.
is
It's even better when you let them there for 40 minutes, Ammon.
really bad. It's a
It
tiny
works so
trap
much
that
better.
can be shot, and therefore, when you have a trap that can be shot, you can't put it in the open.
Yeah, you can post
because
links, a night bottle cancel you, and then I'll just copy and paste it to see
people
it.
can shoot it. So where do you put
Now
it?
you go figure,
you put it
Brax.
behind a damn wall, that's where you put it. And with Hog's turning range seemingly going up to like 180 degrees or so, and Hog's throw-out animation for the pigpen also being relatively low profile, and it making very little noise when it's dropped, and it having no glow effect
say
when it
2 or
comes
3
around
weeks
it,
ago
the
with the
telegraph may as well not
I
be
haven't
used at
Predict
a
a
low
lot of
level.
6 feet,
And
5
at high
5.
level,
Yeah, that's the
it's
one
even
I was thinking of watching.
worse because the trap is so
Oh god, Nightbot's actually hates him. How do you fix a timeout? Oh god, no. What's happened? React streamer? Well, it doesn't matter. My chat's being banned. There you go, watch it later. Oh god, I'm gonna watch it myself. Ah, we're getting create a dashboard. I'm doing it. I'm saving you. I'm saving you. You're gonna be saved. I don't know how to do this. Stream manager. That seems like a thing. No, I don't want to open your pop-up. Stop that. Stream together. Edit. Quick actions. Is it in the quick actions? Chat? Community? I don't know how to untime out someone. Does anyone know how to do it?
so obvious.
Apparently you took one for the team. Oh my god. Can somebody tell me how to do it?
They're vaguely behind a wall near Roadhog is always a pretty good guess. The second problem it didn't solve was sharpness. The trap's combo did reduce the lethality against DPS pretty well, but for the tanks...
I'm banned by clicking on his name. His name's been cancelled by the... His name's been cancelled because all of his messages have been deleted, so I can't even click on his name. Use the unban command. Unban How many A's? See if that works? That didn't work. Random! Yes, you came through! Thank you, sorry about that.
So what happens when you do nothing to affect the part of the hook that actively matters to them, and then put a slow effect on them once they get there?
Thanks, Bash.
It's literally
Appreciate
even worse
it.
than it was before.
Yeah.
So Roadhog just
The worst part is that the displacement from the hook was a big part. And then, like he's saying, the slow is disproportionately more affected on tanks. The slow, you don't give a frick about a slow and a squishy. Who does anyone care? No, it's
yeah,
just
because you're either using it in cooldown or you're dying if you're a squishy.
that matters. And so, like, again, it reemphasizes the play that he's playing. Stop donating.
Spilo, please. Spilo, please. Am I this bad sometimes? Do I get mic peaks like this? If I was planning on yelling like this, you know, I just banned it like way lower.
your standing gameplay.
You guys are lucky that I have the audio output capture from my computer capped so it can't go over a certain level. And it sounds higher to me.
Still worked exactly the same because the actual execution of the trap was completely flubbed. It deploys so fast that you can.
That's how you get money, guys. Stop donating Twitch Prime to me. No, don't do it. No, stop giving me money. Oh no, I'm so disondulate. Yeah.
Throw it down, hook immediately after, and use
That's
it
true, yeah.
any way you want. If you're doing that fat bastard Roadhog thing, which he always could because he's a tank by running through the entire map to get you, it doesn't matter if the hook is slightly more telegraphed, because a telegraph wasn't
You've seen
the
that
trap.
ninja clip.
It was the fact that Roadhog started running towards you 5 seconds ago. The only real progress the combo made in reality was slightly
He still hasn't realized he's being led down the track.
increasing the skill floor
Hey,
of the
gonna
hook
get that.
combo by essentially ensuring
Yes.
that you have to not waste the trap on something random before you want to hook.
Right, exactly.
Beautiful freeze frame of me, by the way. Love
You
that.
know, yeah. I think the thing is also is that like
you
it
can
didn't
do it,
even
Spilo.
really increase the ceiling that much because there isn't a whole lot that you can do with trap in terms of like I really tried when he first came out to try and think of like creative ways to use it, and it really
No, it was literally a way of turning the hook combo into 2 pieces to make it so he's less lethal, and then players left because it was less lethal, and so they re-implemented it because they were only there because it was lethal in the first place.
it really is just throw it on a corner wherever you're at, really. By the way, if you guys actually want like the thoughtful conversation, we had thoughtful conversation early in today's stream, like the first 45 minutes and even the earlier parts of this
This is
year.
a
Now we're just kind
thoughtful
of running through, and I'm more curious to see, think hog shotgun hook combo would be better on DPS here? I don't really think so.
Yes.
I don't really think so.
Yes.
I'm not, dude.
Yes.
I'm not trying to. I don't want to react.
It would be
guys. This is not-
infinitely
yeah,
better on a DPS hero, and that's why, weirdly enough, Marvel Rivals has done that on a DPS hero. Yeah, have you noticed that? How they've recreated Hog, but on a DPS character? Have you seen that? Yeah, Winter Soldier, by now, if you want to look up.
That's just why I don't do React content unless I have something thoughtful to say. This is the one I talked with Rolf about it, and I was like, maybe there's something that I can learn from this here. I think the one thing that I learned is that he was talking about how like the whole hog has been exacerbated in 5v5, which is a really good point. A couple of other things that kind of like reconfirming some of this stuff here. So
Less lethal to DPS players. Now, I don't work at Blizzard, I don't have in-depth player number statistics, I am only a sage capable of reading between the lines, and it's pretty obvious in retrospect to me what happened next. So to
Pretty
explain
obvious.
the rest of the story, we have to turn no longer to the gameplay, but to the meta. So, the rework went in. All of this, all the whining about the hook, all of the complaining about hard pressure and volatility, really belies what I'm sure you've been all saying in your head since the video started. None of this was ever an accident. The hook, the self-sustain, the survivability, the selfishness, Roadhog was and has always been completely on purpose a magnet for DPS players who want to moonlight in the tank role to give them an option which fits more around what they normally enjoy doing.
ooh, that's a conspiracy theory.
How is that? No, fuck off. No, that is not a conspiracy theory, Spilo. Get screwed. Ah.
Oh, hi,
Come
Sky.
on.
Trap has been bugged against Zarya for ages. I'll start a position. Maybe I'll get removed. That would be lovely, Sky. It's a fair point. But also, Mercy exists. And Mercy players have been miserable. Mercy's,
The conspiracy is that Blizzard made Roadhog to cater to DPS players. That is not a fucking conspiracy, guys. Come on. Come on, do you need empirical data for this one? Do you need me to like get the player statistics out? Do we need their statistics right now? Like, is that a thing we need to confirm this, that Roadhog was catered on purpose towards DPS players? Is that
position for a long time, including Mercy players? I think there's just certain characters that they just don't know exactly what to do with, and it's because
I don't think he's touching my point.
They're really difficult to design indoor balance, and that they were like fundamentally flawed in some way, shape, or form, and it isn't really an easy option or choice.
Yeah, very weird response.
It's also worth pointing out that Mercy and Hog haven't tweaked a lot. Like, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this, but
what don't you no, if he can say I don't necessarily think I agree that Hog was made to cater to DPS players or has been more inclined to cater to DPS players over time, I'd be like, okay, but I genuinely just don't think he's got my point.
I also don't really know.
And that sounds
Yeah, I think he's just tapped out there.
absolutely fine on the surface. It sounds like it wouldn't cause any problems whatsoever. Blizzard has pitched their entire theory of mind in terms of how to...
Oh god, he's lost me here. How is he going to start drinking from the water if I've lost him down the path?
on the mind map and on the hero fantasy.
Come on, Spilo.
Every time they try
Come
and
on.
work around it to make the combat
Come on.
less sharp. I mean,
Come on,
the win rate
Spilo.
of Roadhog doesn't drop off that much, but the player
Maybe.
numbers drop off
We're going to the shed.
exactly as the numbers did this time. Exactly as they always have. Because when you make a fantasy or a mind
Yeah, just because we did get rated, I do want to point out, guys, if you want to check out Relth, is he streaming right now?
He's attractive and pretty.
Is he streaming right now?
he should have dumped them all into my chat. Yes, that's what he should have done.
Frick.
They've even made comments about Curie being made for DPS players. Devs totally do this. 100% do this. Get absolutely screwed if you... Yeah, no, that is not a genuine argument Spilo's making, right? He's just misunderstood, surely. Same for Iliari? Yeah, 100%.
Oh, he's in streaming now. Oh, okay, either way. You can check out his YouTube channel, and he does stream twitch.tv/Relth.
Who is around?
And
No, he's not. No, he's not.
He's a pretty
He
smart
ended
dude.
stream an
I've
hour
known
ago.
him
Oh, Placid, I see
for a
you.
long time. Not really well, but we've kind of both been in the coaching sphere for a long time, and so smart guy. Good videos. Check him out.
Thanks, Dad. Love you.
or a plan for a character, what you actually make isn't always just the content of the whiteboard.
Bubble breaks earlier.
Redish is in there advertising my plugs just there.
Just below the surface the entire time. The insidious force undermining every step made towards making Roadhog more reasonable, removing every chance of...
Yeah, no, I don't see an issue with making support/tank characters that suit the DPS playstyle. Making Ana for people who like snipers is not a bad thing. The problem is that making tank characters that act like DPS characters and therefore are more lethal has fundamental problems with the gameplay loop. And if you give this lethality to these characters in the tank role, you can no longer take it away because they have been given something extra, so you can't remove it. So it becomes an untellable issue with the game where you can never walk back the lethality, and you always have to keep climbing and keep climbing and keep climbing until the entire game has every single character, every single tank just be a big DPS as a fundamental.
the insta-kill hook being rubbed off.
Oh, here we go.
Let's rip the band-aid off and speak some actual truth here. The players who play Roadhog don't care about the hook. They don't care about the selfishness. They don't care about the
I think I
heal.
did
They
the
don't
breakdown
care about
here
being
quite well.
fat. They don't care about the lore or the fantasy or the hero design at all. The players who play Roadhog only care about stomping a lobby. And I know this is the case because this is exactly the player base Blizzard has purposely courted over the years.
Wait, isn't he saying like, isn't they like just run the lobby, like raid boss kind of a
Stop
thing?
the lobby. Be a higher rank than the lobby. Want to break the lobby. Want to murder people. Want to get more kills. Want to win. Fundamentally.
Moonlighting in the tank queue, compounding every single problem with his kit. Because when you make a tank lethal, you make all of the components that makes a character good to smurf on better. He's by far the best solo carry in the game and has been since the game's launch. And if you're even slightly better than the enemy team, you can run tank queue while ignoring all tank synergy and gameplay without breaking a sweat at 60% plus win rate. This has always been compounded by the fact that a player from a different category looking to play tank will necessarily...
we did.
When it comes to lethality, is that will cause the introduction to immortality to counteract? No, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, so the immortalities don't necessarily counteract sharp volatile pressure, and the reason for that is the lethalities are very time bound, and sharp volatile pressure tends to be angular based more than anything else. It tends to be unpredictable in a way that you can't immortality it. So the immortalities in particular don't necessarily do that. Yeah, the immortality was still more so, as Amon says, to counteract ults and other stuff like that, to the point where you could pick a character so that you didn't get instantly shut down by Grav Dragon or something like that. You can't emo Widow headshot, yeah.
We did talk about that, yeah, sure.
Don't necessarily be competing against people lower than them in skill.
Wait, what?
He's by far the best solo carry in the game and has been since the game's launch. And if you're even slightly better than the enemy team, you can run tank queue while ignoring all tank synergy and gameplay without breaking a sweat at 60%.
That's always been the thing for Rework.
This has always been compounded by the fact that a player from a different category looking to play tank will necessarily...
we did talk about that, yeah, sure.
Don't necessarily be competing against people lower than them in skill and smurfing if they do pick tank.
It's the same way when the people say that Mercy is like not a character to climb with. You can climb the Grandmaster with Mercy, especially when she's a relatively meta character. Like, she does have a lot of skill expression. The problem is it's not always the
This is quite the
fastest way of doing
conspiracy
things,
in
right?
chat.
So,
What the
like,
hell?
if you're just significantly better than every other player, picking a character that just cheats the game is the most efficient way to doing things. That doesn't matter for 95, 99% of the player population. It only matters for the 1% of player population that's either smurfing or whatever else.
1% of player
right?
population is not 1% on Roadhog, because if you want to increase your tank SR fast, and you are actually a Masters player, and your tank SR is decayed to the gold level, what fucking character do you pick, Spilo? You pick the character that could always stomp lobbies. You pick the character that could always insta-kill people by having slightly better positioning than them. You pick the character that is more lethal overall. And yes, Roadhog is not quite as lethal as fucking Reinhardt now. That's the problem. That's the issue. That's the bad thing.
And then it was compounded again when the priority pass forced...
And it's made worse because people are like, what's the best solo carry hero? And people are going to say, Roadhog. The people ask
Yes, but he's not if you're actually at the right
When
rank.
people are asking, what's the best solo carry character? Who's asking?
The best smurfing
Who's
character
asking?
if you have a higher
asking
game
that
sense
question?
read on the game
What kind
as a
of people are
DPS
asking
than the
that
other players
question?
in the lobby. Yes, that's when Roadhog is good.
Gold
Because-
players, new players, silver players.
And this is part of my real problem with scripting this part. I was going to talk about Smurfs, but I didn't have time
new
to
to
talk about
first-person
Smurfs
shooters,
before.
players that are new to Overwatch.
So I needed to kind of
players that are
introduce the
stock,
concept, but I didn't have time.
Plats. And so when you ask them and you say, what's the best solo carry character with Roadhog, do you see how they're asking a question and getting an answer to a different question? The question that they really want to know is, what is a character that I can play at my skill level and improve at faster
No, not improve that. They don't give a shit about improving. They give a shit about winning.
compared to other characters? And the irony
But yeah, at my skill rank, yes.
is that Roadhog is almost never the answer to that question.
Unless you have a higher SI and DPS, in which case Roadhog always is the answer.
Because the mechanical floor for that character
Right click was
is
good for
higher than a
mechanically
lot of
strong
other
players.
teams.
Yeah, if you learn
And
the character.
the feedback on
a bit of a skill
failure
curve getting.
is so ambiguous, as we talked about earlier, that it's actually not always very simple to know your path to improvement as it is with a character like Reinhardt. That's why when people ask me what's the best character to improve on, I always ask them what character they enjoy, and they say, well, I like all of them. Reinhardt. You'll get good feedback on exactly what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong.
If you
and
wanna
he
learn
has
the game,
a
yeah.
relatively accessible skill floor. Same thing maybe with a soldier or, I don't know, an Ana. Then you're like, oh, but those are mechanical characters. Yeah, but you get feedback. You get feedback. There's a path from point A to point B.
Yeah, so it's a weird thing. What Emma's saying there was a lot of sustained creep. A lot of fights ended up being determined by ults. So Babs Immortality was introduced as a sort of necessary evil. It's interesting that like in Overwatch 2 we kind of have this, but we have it on an individual character basis. So before in Overwatch 1 you're focused on forcing the immortality so you could do something with ultimates into them. Now we're focused on forcing individual cooldowns from each player because every player has an I survive button. Whereas before there was like one comp that had I survive buttons on everything, and that was Cyberdive, which has enough. Basically every comp is Cyberdive in Overwatch 2. Cyberdive is Sombra Reaper, Lucio Moira, and then frontline dive Diva Winston. So basically there's nothing to dive and you can all move about. But in Overwatch 2 everything's Cyberdive, therefore you need to layer abilities a bit more. You need to force cooldowns, have a breather, and then kill. If you don't force cooldowns, have a breather, then kill in 2 stages, then you really struggle. I feel like as Overwatch 1 went on, if it continued in this kind of mode, people would have kind of got better at doing the layering. But again, since the game has so much gel in it, in terms of being able to stand in one place and not move, it was hard to get a big enough punch into that gel in order to force the first cooldown. It would cost an infinite amount of resources to be able to get the second punch into in order to get proper layering. So yeah, there's an interesting one there. If we just reduced AoE healing, it would have been better. If we just reduced AoE stuff and force speed, the trouble is there was so much gel in the game and no incentive to spread out, even though people by necessity always tend to group up regardless, that it became really oppressive. How's the reaction to the reaction going? It's going well, dude.
Right? And that's what's missing, right? Heck, even Bastion can get a lot of value in lower ranks, but I don't love Bastion a lot as a climbing character because you don't always get very clear feedback on what you're doing wrong. You can burn the enemy tank pretty well.
They're asking a different question.
But sometimes even in lower ranks inconsistently, and that can give you mixed feedback about how much value that you're actually getting.
Hey, Free Samurai. Yeah.
You're
doing well, though.
Right. So
I'm not going insane.
I don't know, man. It's funny. The people who are asking... the people that are asking, that are telling you that are saying that Roadhog is a solo carry character are generally the type of people that wouldn't be asking the question in the first place. All right, PK, remind me as soon as this video is done.
Into the tank role at the end of Overwatch 1, who all, by and whole, chose the character they could carry on the most to get their passes the fastest. And that's the problem, the core, fundamental, unchangeable problem at the center of every...
Oh, the other reason why Roadhog done it with the whole passes thing is that they didn't care about winning or losing either. They're just like, oh, it's going to be fun hitting hooks. I don't give a frick about winning.
Everything with this character, this is the
Diva's
audience
a good hero to learn the fundamentals.
for 8 years.
No, because
that is a spicy take. He might be...
To say, it's not a spicy take to say that Blizzard courted DPS players into the tank role on Roadhog, is it? That's not spicy. Come on, Spilo. I've earned that.
Right, though.
He might be right, though. Okay. He's going to just give
I don't feel educated enough to, like...
You don't feel educated enough to say that Blizzard have purposely courted DPS players into the tank role on Roadhog specifically because he is clearly more of a DPS type character? Come on. Come on, dude. Come on.
No, not necessarily.
Not interested in learning how to play tank, not interested in push or pull, not interested fundamentally in tanking. And the worst part...
I will say, though...
I say Diva was a very good character to learn the fundamentals originally, but now she can just shut down everything. She's very good at learning how to control angles. I'd say for the push and pull, you can't learn that much of it.
That risk is a fundamental part of progress. Like, you want risk in your game because it's like basically, okay, let me give you guys an analogy. What is the first person shooter? What is the game? Is it Rust, where they have like a camping problem where they just kind of like AFK and just like sit in a bush for like 7 years? I know there was like some complaints about that early in COD, but like, was it Rust? I swear I heard that somewhere. Maybe it was from SK or something.
Tarkov and Fortnite.
Right. Why do you not want that in your game? There's two reasons why. One, because people hate playing versus it. But two, and this is the juice, this is the sauce, this is the homegrown...
I'm going to say because it is boring to play and the rewards aren't that high.
Ranch. You get what I'm saying? The players that do that are not happy. They just think that
they are. Medium reward? Yeah, I see it in the...
It's not satisfying. Nobody goes... I camped! Woo! Right? It's the equivalent of eating like it's like eating crap, like low accessibility. It's not good. It doesn't bring you satisfaction. It's like you guys ever get like you ever see that with those memes of
I disagree entirely. I love bush camping.
Like those boomers at the bingo
I love
things.
Bush camping.
Just like they literally look like they're zombies. You know what I'm saying? They're not having fun. There isn't like any enjoyable or like even worse, it's like the 3-year-olds with the phones. They're like just they have this whole motion down, you know? That's like the equivalent of Roadhog players. Low risk, no clear feedback on your failure, and hit a hook there, hit a hook there, hit a hook there. Oh, I missed a hook.
I think Roadhog has reasonably clear feedback on missing hooks. I feel like that's just me disagreeing with the first point to start with.
That's literally what you're doing. That's literally what it is. It's the same psychological phenomena. No risk involved. No immediate punishment in your thing. You just sit there and you just mindlessly throw hooks. It's bad. It's very toxic to your game environment. You create a community like that, it's terrible.
I made a lot of progress lately. I like risk. I also like your support. I want to be friends with them.
They're running around.
to skip a little bit.
Just a hard little
Rex.
God, he gets a lot
Well,
of
if you've ever
donations.
played with kids, like
That'd
you
be
get them
nice.
away from their phones, they're laughing, they're smiling, they're running around. You get your grandparents away from the bingo things. They're laughing, they're smiling, they're tripping, falling, tearing their ACL, and taking medication in the hospital. But at least they're away. At least they're engaged. You know what I'm saying? This is not engagement. This is the least engaging tank of them all. This is also similar problems with some of the Orisa and Malga stuff too. You know?
When you as a company spend 8 years
No, I think
playing a role that they don't
I
want
think
to
it's
play,
more engaging for different type of people. I think it's more engaging for DPF players.
simply because you gave them a pragmatic reason to play it in the abilities to stomp lobbies, and then you remove.
We've unlocked
the
it, guys.
only
We've
reason
unlocked
they were
it.
playing it, the lethality. They don't want to play with you anymore.
He's lost me because he paused me halfway through this and he's lost the
So
argument.
it was, as it always will be, when the hook.
Yeah, I feel like he's lost. That was a really important argument to make, that players will quit if you remove lethality from the game after giving it to them, because they you purposely caught the audience that wants lethality. I have a question, guys. If all the tanks right now were made so that they could move around the DPS but realistically not get kills unless there were complementary pressure into them at the same time as they DPS'd, what do you think would happen to the tank player base? Even if they were given compensatory buffs? Or DPS players would leave tank? Yeah, I just don't think it happens. I don't think you can take away the dummy once you give it to them. There's a reason Blockbot Ram is a meme. Yep, there's a reason Blockbot Ram is a meme. Even if Ram can move people around. And you could give a load more health and make them a constant big bruiser that can move people around by walking there. You could give Reinhardt an infinite health bar, right? An infinite fucking health bar. And make his swings do 50 damage per hit, so they're basically useless. Would people play that? Probably not anymore. Not that you're giving the lethality to them. You can't take it away again. I think he's missed this point. That 30's not crazy high. 30 loads of times.
This video is.
By the way, anyone that's new, Pugs on Sunday! We have Pugs on Sunday with 6 here. 6? 7? 6? At least 6 hero reworks. Please come to Pugs on Sunday. I'm lonely. 4 p.m. BST. All you have to do is turn up,
somewhere along the line,
go into the waiting room, and you can play.
You could say that maybe we never knew, but that completely and accidentally, Blizzard somehow managed to make tanks in Overwatch.
Delete Roadhog, man.
But then we moved on to Overwatch 2. And that
Speaking
was
of Gen Z, how much we got here?
because Blizzard
Bruisers.
since Overwatch almost exclusively shifted in the direction of lethality and therefore.
We've almost
lacking
fixed most of the
more
characters that are
sharp.
problematic, to be
And I
honest.
think the problem.
Camera angle on the shadow made me crazy. Why that?
Facility, relatively high sharpness zone of pressure, which he could not.
Okay, I fucked up here because I front-loaded the argument with Reinhardt without the rationale for the other characters. That was my bad. And I didn't restate my argument before stating the examples, so he is not currently following, in my opinion, not fully.
He had no way to
Well,
press
well,
the
the
enemy
man
team,
speak his
simply
space.
disrespected his space. Even when you include Lucio into the mix, the boundaries may be larger on his pressure, but they're always readable and certain. With one change, one seemingly insignificant change, the charge
He's
cancel,
gonna be mad.
Yes, but there's more space to move around it. I understand what he's saying, that there's a removal of risk, but the thing is there still is risk. There still is.
It doesn't matter what the risk is, because he can still charge across half the map arbitrarily and kill you. And low-rank players will get negative feedback by the fact that they are arbitrarily killed at random by tanks that are actively feeding and losing the game, regardless. And therefore, they will spread out more, and therefore you end up with the same problem as Roadhog.
It's risk. There still is risk, and you can't be in multiple places at the same time. I understand the argument here. There's logic here. I just don't fully agree with it in a 5v5 environment. I understand what he's saying, though.
Kill you anyway. The only way to stop this happening as a DPS is to increase your knowledge on exactly
By the way, look at this clip. Look at this clip up here, it's genuinely.
what is possible for the Reinhardt.
He just
Save
did a
yourself
charge.
around the possibility of charge, play within range whilst holding survivability or movement
The Ashe isn't even bothering to shoot him.
downs, or to very importantly and interestingly, to damage
Look
the
at this.
Reinhardt and counter.
They aren't even bothering to
the point
shoot
where they
because
no
this is
longer
what
just
happens to the
charge
health bar when they start
Zarya
shooting.
used to
There's nothing you can do about it.
have one readable personal bubble. Which
They
can
do
be
die at the
by
end of that.
anyone at a low level.
This is why mobility creep has still been like something that's healthier within the 5v5 format, because it means you don't just automatically lose because of the pin. You have the opportunity to reposition.
Yeah, so there's no risk, there's not really a choice. Yeah. And regardless of whether there's a choice or not, to go and instantly kill somebody that's used their mobility cooldown if they haven't used it already. Sorry, if they randomly used it. So if we're on first point back here on the if we're on first point back here and we're on the first choke and a Hanzo stands on the phone box and a Reinhardt charges over to the phone box and kills him, the Hanzo's not going to stand there anymore. He's going to stand on main next time because he doesn't realize that, or he's going to stand on the phone box, but he'll constantly save lunge at all times because he thinks he's going to be randomly killed. So they'll either stalemate abilities or they'll stand at a more boring place. That's the argument.
Spilo versus Unsalt, is Salt debate would go crazy? No. We've already done that twice on the Group Up podcast. I'm not interested. Unsalt's like a fine guy. We've crossed that road, man.
One seemingly insignificant change, Zarya went from fair to unfair. Now in Overwatch 2, Zarya has 2 personal bubbles, and as far as low-level players or players who haven't seen how many bubbles she's used off-screen are concerned, she will now arbitrarily have 2 bubbles when it's the least convenient to them and kill them at random.
Yes, Peggy. Peggy's hungry.
I get it again. It's like more, but it's also like, let me give you guys the difference here, okay? Let me give you guys the difference here. It is reducing counterplay to the ability.
Readability of the ability, not counterplay. Readability, so that you know if you do have to space out or not.
Right? You could cancel charge, reduces counterplay. You could double bubble yourself, reduces counterplay.
It doesn't reduce counterplay. There's still counterplay. The counterplay is to save your ability cooldown or space yourself around the possibility of being charged out. And if people are stupid and they're getting poor feedback by the fact that they get randomly killed by a tank doing something stupid and suiciding at them when they can do nothing about it, then people will play differently. Are there any patch notes, Didac?
But it is also giving you significantly more choices of what you do, and if you misuse a bubble, you're punished. All right.
Yeah, but individual players against the Zarya have no way to counteract the fact that they don't know if the Zarya has 2 bubbles or not. They don't know if the Zarya can go and kill them. So what do? They space out around the Zarya, they save cooldowns in case the Zarya has 2 bubbles, and they play within the uncertain death zone and have a more boring gameplay loop due to randomly dying. People don't enjoy this, so they space out and stall out the game, and that's why Colosseo is bad at a low level. At a high level, Colosseo is bad because of fundamental things about Colosseo when the glass was implemented, because it is so defensively favored, so aggressing is poor. But at low level, people don't know that it's defensively favored, so do you know why they spread out? Because it's a long corridor and they can be arbitrarily killed by a Reinhardt just fucking charge cancelling in their general direction if they ever use a cooldown while in the corridor. It's the source and the only one that has the patch notes. Yes. Love you.
Gente, si estáis viendo este video, right? The problem with compare that with the Roadhog vape change and just the overall rework as a whole. Yes, it reduced the value of counterplay, but it didn't give him more options. It's the same playstyle loop.
It
just doesn't introduce more options. It just reduces your options versus the character. So what ends up happening in 5v5 is the skill gap is not just your ability not to die, but your ability to make the right choice.
When it comes to negative feedback, wouldn't it feel worse to die to RNG like Amma said about Junkrat as opposed to misplaying a mobility cooldown in your example Hanzo's lunge, showing that they made a mistake causing them to adjust its punishment for poor positioning as opposed to having the bailout of poor position, i.e. life grip. Okay, so I'm gonna... Oh, I've been logged out. Give me a sec. Let me log myself back in. Let's do a... Because this is the most controversial thing I've said, so I may as well back it up in a reasonable way. No, I'm not playing now. I want to be playing now, but I'm not playing now. Come on, guys. Post it in Discord. I'll post it. It's in the general. That's grateful. Stop watching Overwatch 2 tier list. You're wasting your time. The official Overwatch 2 tier list with Juno. Wonderful. Juno glide boost down from 6 to 8. Stop spoiling me. Go away. You're being naughty. Naughty, naughty boy. One sec, guys. I'm just bringing up King's Row so that I can get a appropriate example. Give me 1 sec. I'll get there. And naturally, it's loaded on the wrong monitor. Let's go borderless windowed. It's I'm gonna assume it hasn't deleted any. There you go. Kings. Thank God I have a Kings in the list. Okay, so this is a moderately poor example, but an okay example. Okay, so right here, if I'm here aggressing as Reinhardt, and the enemy team are playing generally on defense there, and they're playing in the choke, and they're playing here, and I see a Hanzo playing here that has good support, so can stand there, could 100% always stand here in the 6v6 format, and I see him use his lunge randomly, it is 100% correct to go pin that. 100% correct. Where is the risk in going to pin that? If I'm at full health when I go to pin, I can just stand on the pillar. And I have full LOS for my team in order to be able to heal me. I can stand here with complete impunity from the enemy team. I'm absolutely fine standing here. And I guarantee the kill on the Hanzo, because the Hanzo can do nothing since he uses lunge. You will die? What are you on about, you will die? How will I die by pinning the backline there? You'll die? He can wall climb? That's true. I'm using Hanzo as like a standard for other characters. This is obviously a general statement of other things. I know there's walls by it and there's this high ground by it that complicates it and stuff like that. Stop posting patches and changes. Basically, the idea is I could, as Reinhardt, suicide at somebody on an angle, and if they have not used their cool, if they have used their cooldown, they essentially die immediately. It'd be a good trade, but you might get killed. It would be a good trade, but you'll die. Okay. So what? So theoretically, I'm playing. Maybe I'm playing an Ashtron here, and I can't wall climb. I use coach gun like an idiot. I drop off high ground. I start shooting from here. The Reinhardt charges over, kills me, and dies. I'm a silver player. What do I do next time, guys? I fucking play over here because I'm an idiot. Because I've been given negative feedback for standing over there. Or maybe I play over here and I keep the coach gun. Those are the two options. So either you stalemate all mobility stuff like this and make it so you have to have the mobility in order to stand over here, whereas before you didn't have to have the mobility because Reinhardt had a stop at the end of his pin, so you could actually walk away from it and keep supporting him. Or you just play more narrow and more long. Those are the options. If I go for like 10 different examples of this, it's always the same. If the character is more untenable or unpredictable, the answer is, if I was to play up here and the enemy team is playing D.Va, I have to go that way back to main. Is that not universally true, guys? Is having the tank being more lethal and the fact that I might die here actually like something that's going to... So you can tell me, well, yes, you can play up there. That's okay to play because the D.Va's going to trade, right? The D.Va's going to boost at you. It's a load of resource out the enemy. The D.Va might lose more resources, but you still fucking die because the tank's lethal. So what do low rank players do instead of standing up there? They're going to stand back on main. I see this like all the time, every single time. The narrow angles from DPS players in particular are mainly due to them not being able to predict the outcome of tanks on the enemy team, or for them dying at random to DPS on the enemy team. But at least when it's from the DPS, it's reasonably fair because they had some sort of counterplay. 4v5 resulting in the kill from the pin will allow Ryan to survive. My point is, it doesn't fucking matter if the Ryan survives. It matters that the Ryan can kill you there. That is unpredictable pressure. Even if it's a bad decision for Ryan to charge over there and kill you, what does it matter? Because the Ryan still can just choose to kill you. If you misuse your abilities, or you position in a weird way, or you misuse your cooldown, something like that. Like, he can choose to kill you. That's bad. Because you are inclined to stand in a different place next time. It's poor feedback for good positioning. Because your positioning might have been like slightly wrong, or you weren't fully predicting the exact health. Like you weren't playing this doorway because you see the Reinhardt's on 700, and you weren't playing on the pillar here because you see the Reinhardt's on 500 and he can't come and get you like a really high rank player would. Because that's the fine tuning that high rank players do. They play on this corner and they peek this, or they preemptively move away from here the moment they see the Reinhardt charge in order to space out. I'm not getting why positioning somewhere better is poor feedback, because that is a good place to stand in a theoretical world, in which case you can space yourself out properly, but they're not capable of reacting properly to it. It's the kind of thing like here. It's good to position there, right? And then be able to get back to here and be able to get back to your team if you can. That's a good thing to kind of like think about being able to do. But if we're standing here, right, if the enemy Zarya that's aggressing has 2 bubbles, they can just go fucking kill you. If the enemy Zarya has 1 bubble, it's safe to stand there. Particularly for like some of the like less mobile characters that struggle to get back from that. There's hundreds and hundreds of situations exactly like this, where just the fact that you can't tell whether they have extra resources. If you're a silver player and the Zarya turns up to have 2 bubbles and just fucking murders you here, do you know what you're doing next time? You're going back to main. It's just teaching people to have worse theoretical positioning because they can't predict the intricacies of what your theoretical capable lethal pressure output is. Is that it? I don't know if I explained that well enough. I probably dropped like 20 viewers while trying to explain this. That's the argument. Let's go back to crying. There's no patch notes Morning DA and company. We only discovered that the Spanish guys not make things up because I load up the game and tested.
So
I'm always looking for people there. I like charging the area because it has good LOS for them seeing my charge coming. Alec Dawson tweet. Send links, guys.
Pinning in Overwatch 2 is less risky, usually. But I still have to pin to the right spot, and there's still a lot of choices I have to make before I use that pin. With Roadhog, there's no choice.
Alex says Spilo smells.
Do you pin your bubble yourself? Do you bubble a teammate? Do you double bubble a teammate? Do you bubble one teammate, then a different teammate? Do you bubble yourself and then decide, right? And so yes, there are more choices, but there's also more ways to get it wrong. There's more ways to get it.
Oh, he's tweeted the patch notes. Okay, let's do patch notes. That's it? Oh, that's an interesting one. Glide boost cooldown reduced from 8 to 6. Mediblaster damage increased from 7 to 8. So the damage is doing different than the healing now. I don't mind that. Maximum damage reduced to 70. Minimum damage reduced to 20. Ooh, that's significant. Interesting. So if it was a good spot, what's wrong with me charging there? I'm not sure because it was a good spot. It should be somewhere I can't pin. No, the fact is you were not able to threaten that position without walking to it before, so the enemy team had a chance to react to that or didn't have to have their mobility cooldown in order to react to that. That's the argument. I'm not sure if I'm talking past you because I'm misreading you. Yeah, this is like nothing. What about Sombra? 5.5? Fuck me. It's almost a 10% nerf. It's more than an 8% nerf. Jesus Christ. What? Change it to 7 for a day and change it back. This will not stay. Like, this is way too much of a nerf. Like, that is a crazy damage reduction. Fucking hell. This is not the thing you do in a day or two. This is something you should be thinking about for a long period of time. Wow. Hey, Corpy. Why did they touch Tracer? Because, sorry, Vash, Juno was dying to Tracer and Sombra and Dive in general because Juno had no abilities to actually save themselves. So what they did is they gave Juno still no ability to save themselves and then directly buffed one of the characters that are many that hunts down Juno. Hate playing versus Tracer and I'm happy. I also don't like Tracer. I liked her in Overwatch 1 when the counterplay. There's no real counterplay to Tracer. Maybe 2-5 made it too strong. Well, for Juno, yeah, this is pretty rash. I guess we have a different idea of good positioning. For me, as I think of it as good positioning is somewhere I can't charge. But you're saying I shouldn't be able to control that space in that way. I'm saying that you should be able to control that space, Ammon, by walking to it. Or if you pin to it, it should be costly and the enemy should be able to walk out of that space. I'm saying you should be able to move them around. If you charge that space, you can start immediately threatening lethal pressure. And if they don't have an ability to get out of there, they die. Okay? That's the argument, right? They said nothing for 1 hour and people play ranked on the patch. It's a little bit rushed. Okay, that makes more sense. Maybe I wasn't speaking clearly. I was so happy for them to keep doing stupid changes. The changes are more frequent. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm fine with the reactability of the devs, but damage is good. I think people were saying the damage is low without the headshots. It's kind of weird that it's now doing more damage than healing when that seemed like a part of the fantasy of the weapon, that it was doing the same. That just seemed like it. But realistically, in the game, it's not going to be any different. People don't really be able to tell that, so it's fine-ish. Glide Bruce cooldown, fine. It's not going to really improve her survivability. It means you can more liberally use it to engage, but realistically, that is a big enough cooldown that she won't have it if you use it to engage to stop herself being dove, right? Maximum minimum damage. Yeah, Iliari probably needed enough. I don't like the Iliari stuff, but sure, it's probably not high level. Tracer is an absolute sledgehammer to a fucking face. Why are they sledgehammering Tracer? Sledgehammering Tracer just because they did 225 heroes and it unbalanced the game? Is that it? So we're just chasing the dragon all the way down to the bottom. We reduce the health to make the game more sharp. We reduce the damage to make the game less sharp. We increase the health and we increase the damage. Like, we're just doing the shuffle continuously up and down. And yeah, it's just weird. Tracer's back to just harassing. Yeah, nobody's gonna like this Tracer thing in high level play. My 3 mains. Iliari Lurf, because she's dominating high rank. Where's the Tracer players? What the fuck? That's a massive Tracer nerf. Okay, yeah, Tracer definitely out the meta now.
Wrong.
Okay, that's about
There's
it.
just as many ways to do it right. There's more ways to do it right, but there's just as many ways to get it wrong. And with Roadhog, that's what's been removed. If there's no with Roadhog and even the original design, you could play close, you could play tank, you could play flank, and if you make a mistake, you may die. With Roadhog now, your mid range is so much worse. There's no real motivation with the
I think he's
availability of
disconnected
bait.
from. I just think Spilo at this point is disconnected from my argument, and that's what I've said about Spilo in the past. If he gets the, if he loses track of the argument, he doesn't really like get back, and he kind of just disagrees by default with the rest of the stuff that you have to say. How could I have really solved this? I think part of it's due to the React format where he paused me at like an inconvenient time, so he didn't really follow like the crux argument that I needed. Maybe I could have put more backing on that, I guess, but I think it's fairly reasonable. In terms of this last section, I purposely left it short and vague, but I should have backloaded the Reinhardt charge idea. I thought that I had appropriately explained it with the Roadhog section and people would be able to draw that analogy, but clearly I needed more time spent on it. Yeah, clearly I just needed more time spent on it. The idea is that by making it so that the tank could theoretically threaten that space in a lethal manner without giving you time to literally just walk out of that space, you're making it so that the players have to stalemate abilities or not play in that space, and low rank players by and whole are just going to come up to the solution that they will not play in that space in general, which is in general all interesting space to play on the map. Exactly the same as D.Va. You think about D.Va in all scenarios, it's exactly the same thing, exactly the same problems. Yeah.
Trap and whole hog as it is to do anything other than focus and pressure on the enemy tank.
The Rhine talk just makes it so salty about Malgan's inability to get CC, but just makes it to multiply your point even further though. Yeah, apart from Malga has to hit his stamp on you in order to really be lethal, let's be honest. If Malga doesn't hit his stamp, you can probably just walk away from him. He doesn't kill you that fast. But if Reinhardt charges at you and misses the charge, what he's going to do is he's going to cancel and immediately start hitting you for damage that you need to move out of. And you can't move out of it because you need to get out of range and you move at the same speed as him. Malga at the very least goes at a slower speed and you can walk away from him round a corner. Reinhardt, you can't walk away round a corner because he's chasing you at exactly the same speed. So it's like, Reinhardt's is a lot safer when he charges. I'm going to say that's safer. He still has his shield. Yeah. And Reinhardt can essentially just like chase you regardless.
So there are fewer
I feel like
choices
Malga's a lot less lethal. Malga actually moves people around in a more healthy way than Reinhardt. What a sad, sad sentence.
It's just the same gameplay loop. They did remove and open up more options for tanks in the solo tank environment, and they had to. Otherwise, solo tank never would have worked. However, and I do agree that it does remove counterplay to the character. I think that is you can't argue with that, right? The question is if that counterplay removal was compensated by opening up the skill curve by giving you more choices. And I think that's the case. And I do understand his point, though. I do understand his point. I don't want to contest the point overall.
What's the point? Is it that tanks force more boring positioning through forcing people to space out around the uncertain pressure cycles, etc.? Or is it just like something tanks shouldn't be lethal? Is that it? Because tanks shouldn't be lethal, and therefore this causes massive problems if they are.
Because it is true. It is true.
I want him to state what I'm saying because I'm.
So players do what? Repeat after me.
Maybe this is an unhealthy format to have arguments in. Oh, of course, yeah. But he's a big boy and he's a little bit more, larger than me. So, to the 5v5 of debates, yeah. Spilo did later say when I got into his chat, he asked me if I wanted to come on and talk to him, but I was midway through cooking dinner and I could not. So yeah, he's not being disingenuous. He's being entirely healthy. It's just we can't match noses.
Space yourself out further, play within range and stalemate abilities, or counterpick the Zarya to reduce how far she can chase around corners.
And again, I think that's jumping. I think that's jumping.
Orisa used to have counterplay to her pull, which was by and large an unhealthy ability, but at least it had a massive telegraph in the slow travel time and delay before the pull, and this was replaced by a spear which can literally combo across the map to insta-kill people with a stun combo with no
Now we're just saying things.
interactability.
Yeah, see, he's not on it. He's not in the argument, so he doesn't understand what the argument is there.
Doomfist has been given Empowered Punch, which can arbitrarily kill people from across the map due to completely no fault of their own if somebody else had just shot him for a couple of seconds. Wisdom was
yeah.
Would you prefer live debates or these video responses? I prefer not debates, but be able to like talk about the arguments, obviously.
a much bigger entry combo into his sleeps, giving him a much larger damage spike. Ramatra has been given Vortex, which vastly complicates and changes the safe range to play away from him for low-ranked players, and we...
Now we're just saying things. I think it's because...
Yeah, I think he's lost the plot.
Because it's the compounding of the point, but nah, I don't know.
Also have the
Is other examples of the point of different characters having more lethal pressure and therefore staling out more interesting positioning in the game and forcing more narrow positioning in general.
other solo tanking effect. Every character is bigger, which means
Just
that
play
by
hard to
default,
get to
if a
just
tank
show
ever
up when he
extended
calls.
into space, which is too hard to take or hold, they get burned down in a duel and potentially killed. Now all characters, even those who haven't had obvious mobility,
The more he thinks about me, the more he wants me, Amon.
creep like Diva, can arbitrarily kill any DPS on an off angle because they have no feasible way of fighting her off, creating a chilling effect on anyone positioning
Maybe
in an interesting manner.
there's more space to
So it may be that, because I think the full sentence was listen to in one go.
poke out tanks, though's the thing.
Nah, you're not poking out Diva. Fuck off. He's married,
more
bro,
space-
keep away. I've been with my partner for 10 years. I don't think I'm getting away from her.
It's the poke
Not
out
anytime
tank. So
soon.
like it's again, it's give and take. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, man. I've talked about it a million times, and I'm going to go in more detail into the 6v6 video.
All of these effects, all of the reduction in telegraph and pressure zones, all of the increase in sharpness of the damage sources, all of the increase in volatility of the characters, all of the extra health which could be arbitrarily used to force a kill, where otherwise it would only have forced a trade, they created exactly the same thing Roadhog did and always has done. They increased the skill floor to exist without being arbitrarily blown up with no warning, they spaced out the game to account for the potential to be lethally blown up, and they forced people to play in uncertain pressure zones where they might be killed at random, leading...
See, he's been disagreeing, but if I front-loaded this argument before he responded and before the examples, then I think I would have got there with him, because I think I would have put him on track, and I think that's my bad for the argument
to
structure.
massive ability stalemating in case the tank chooses to randomly...
About a week and a half, Grandma.
Zarya being able to double bubble herself
Maybe
is bad
2 weeks.
design. Reinhardt being able to charge cancel is bad design. Doomfist being able to insta-kill you whilst being in the tank category due to somebody else charging your power block is bad design. Orissa's javelin and her spin being able to completely shut down the enemy brawl tank with sharp pressure, forcing them to always conserve resources and never regress in a never-ending
I disagree, agree, disagree.
make them burn down is bad design. Roadhog being
Yeah, and he doesn't know why I'm saying this, so he's not really like keyed in.
in the game from the release of Overwatch 1.
Is my read, obviously. It's hard to get an accurate measurement because yeah, he's not. That's the trouble. When I'm disagreeing with people, I try and state that argument in a concise manner so they can't say I'm misunderstanding. And Spilo hasn't really done that here, so it's a little bit hard to tell exactly what he's disagreeing with.
8 years ago until now has been bad.
I
Specifically
don't
those
like how a lot of the 66 argument, and Samita does the same thing too, is like they're very hostile to like dynamic hero design. And by dynamic as in like you can use an ability, like you could choose how you want to use the ability. I don't like that. I like oh, that all characters have to be homogeneous in a 5v5 environment. I don't like that. I don't like that. I think Reinhardt should have had pin cancel in Overwatch 1. And then if that makes him too strong at just being able to rotate for free, then take some of his
It's not the rotate, it's the cancel and immediately hit something.
shield HP down.
No, I get that. Like that is a good argument for keeping it. Like if it's too, but it's not about being strong. It's about the chilling effect on angles that the charge cancel has.
Right? I don't
argument.
like that. I don't like that. Oh, we have very harsh counterplay of options.
Matt's Donuts and Coffee says Ralph hates pin cancel. Who are you, Matt's Donuts and Coffee? Literally, who are you? I've never seen that name before. Why do you think I hate pin cancel? Am I an internet phenomenon now where people that don't know me are randomly saying things?
If you make a mistake, you instantly die. I know Ralph hates pin cancel, and I don't like that. I like pin cancel. If you think it's too easy for Ryan to clear out space, then maybe Ryan has too much armor.
Not clear out space, murder people in that space at low rank, or force them away. Be too lethal.
Maybe we leave pin cancel, but we chunk some of his armor out.
So you want him still to be lethal, but to be incredibly high risk when he is lethal? Okay, but then he's just a DPS. And the more you chunk out his armor, and the more you leave the lethality in, the closer and closer he just gets to a big DPS instead of a tank.
I don't like, I think it's...
Would you be for pin charge if there was a longer recovery animation? Yes. If you could cancel and not, the important thing is, right, if you look at pin cancel, I'll go into training room so I'll show you exactly what I mean. The problem with pin cancel isn't anything else. It's the fact that he can instantly start moving towards the target he gets to on the pin cancel, right? So if I go here, I charge into a wall, stun, then you move. Okay, that's the thing that's been removed by the lack of pins cancel. If I pin cancel, and start swinging that way, you can just immediately get on someone, and if they don't have a movement ability, they're dead. But before, even if Reinhardt could pin to a place by you, let's say you were on this corner and Ryan pins to the corner, stun, and you can't get to them if they move away properly. And that's really easy to react to for a low rank player, and it's very hard for a low rank player to react to this, cancel, and immediately swing around the corner. That's the difference. Is the increased amount of lethality in the lower telegraph for what's happening. What if we had a massive slow if you cancel pin? Oh hell yeah! If you had a slow that slowed you down for like half a second if you cancel pin, that would fix all the problems. Yeah. If they do not have a movement ability or are standing on high ground, they should be dead. I mean, sure, but that's just lethal pressure, right, Amon? Right, that's the thing. It's just lethal pressure. So if you made pin cancel essentially hitting a rule on demand, yeah. So just stuns it for a second, lets people walk away. It's the difference between people being able to walk away, which means it's a yellow zone of pressure, and people being like having to use an ability to get away, which means it's a red zone of pressure. That's the difference. So you see in my like 3 concentric circles where it's green, where it's red, yellow, green. That's the difference, right? If they are on this corner and I can charge and I stun, and then I can go at them and they can walk away from it by seeing the telegraph of me charging and not having to press an ability. Then they can stand on this corner without having a movement ability while I'm over there. If they can't, and they have to have a Hanzo lunge in order to get away, or something else in order to get away, then I have necessarily staled out that movement ability in order for them to be able to stand here. It would not feel as good, but I don't think it would change a lot. It would change a ridiculous amount because it would make it so that people could stand there without a movement ability. Currently, if you don't have a movement ability, on that corner you are dead. That's the lethal pressure. That's the design. That's the difference. That's Roadhog hook. Stun, and then we go. Exactly the same. And it's exactly the same as if I was Zarya standing here and I'm shooting somebody on that corner and I have 1 bubble so I can kind of get to here, versus not knowing if I'm that player, if I have 1 bubble or 2 bubbles so I can chase them around the corner. Exactly the same. Do I need to stall out an ability? Do I not need to stall out an ability? Is the pressure red? Is the pressure yellow? Can I stand there safely? Can I not stand there safely? It's hard to tell because I would have used a Zarya bubble over here or on somebody else who's over. I would have bubbled that guy over there so nobody can fucking tell if I have 2 bubbles. If you can't tell if I have 2 bubbles, you have to act as if I have 2 bubbles if you don't know a low rank and you don't want to get fucking insta-killed. 100% bring that to an argument? Sure. I'm happy to. But as I said before, August, and here's the kicker at the end of the video, August. Do you know what happens when you take lethality away from players that specifically pick the characters for lethality and not the movement of the character and other things like that? Exactly the same thing as Roadhog. The specific players, and obviously I'm not saying it's all, that are only in the tank category because tank category is a big DPS who can kill people on that corner, will stop playing the tank category. And then the queues are going to go up for the other roles. That's why you can't fix it. That's why you can't fix Roadhog, because you can't remove the double bubble, because some people play the double bubble specifically to chase round corners and get kills. And you can't remove the charge cancel in a reasonable way or make it so you get stunned here and then can chase, because some people pick Reinhardt specifically in order to be able to chase round that corner and get a kill. If you remove the lethality by increasing the telegraph and other stuff like that, then you still lose those type of players that were only there for that. But that's a thing for a tank, isn't it? Having lethality to draw attention and make space. The only other thing I can think of is that you'd be able to displace enemies, like physically move them away. But if there's a telegraph about lethality, enemies can walk away. I can put that in tomorrow. That's the thing, don't I don't think people will enjoy it. I just think it creates really bad incentives on players who are at a low rank and don't really understand the fucking video game. Because do you know the weirdest thing? As you get into high rank, if you're on this corner specifically here, right, you're there, and I'm gonna charge cancel at you, and I'm on 500 HP. Do you know what other players will do? They'll be able to stand there if they think it's relevant at a high rank. If they think they can do that, tagging that. They'll be able to stand there if they think they can at high rank. But at low rank, they won't know the difference between 700 HP on a Reinhardt and 500 HP on a Reinhardt. They won't know the difference between full armor and half armor. They won't know that a Reinhardt can't charge cancel them if they're out of armor and have the appropriate read on the resource of the enemy's team, like Susan and stuff like that. So they won't know they can capitalize by standing in a more interesting position because of that. Part of playing Ryan is pinning people and killing them. When that is taken away, you take a big part of enjoyment of Ryan. I think it's acceptable for people because Ryan pinning is honest. Hog's hook is not. Yes. And the Ryan pin is a skill shot that essentially requires you to be in LOS at the start of the Reinhardt's charge. I think that's the more important thing. But the charge cancel allows Ryan to be lethal around the corner, which is absolute complete fucking horseshit. Why does the Reinhardt player not simply play Mauga instead? Well, that's the other thing. If I'm playing Mauga, I can stomp around this corner. I can stomp to about here. And if you walk away from a Mauga player who's doing this, you survive. It takes like 2 minutes to code, sure. But I don't think it's going to cause any good feedback from the players in the lobby, specifically because what I'm talking about is something that changes the way that low-rank players feel they can stand, and high-rank players have a good enough read on the Reinhardt's charge ability that they will appropriately change their positioning to not stale out abilities if they don't need to, and to stand in more aggressive positioning if they can relative to the tank's health bar and other stuff on the team. Free swings to kill someone is not very lethal. It is if you have no movement abilities to get out of it. In fact, it's inevitable death eventually if you have no movement abilities to get out of it. If you're playing Ashe from that corner and I press shift and I start hitting you, you're dead unless you have coach gun. That's the only thing that's going to stop it. Or if somebody else bails you out, obviously. But if I have a fucking Kiriko healing this Ashe, they're still dead because I can keep pressing W. Sometimes with the amount of damage being thrown at you, 1 to 2 swings is all you can get away with. Agreed entirely, Amon. Sometimes 1 to 2 swings is all you can get away with. But that's the problem with putting the pressure on a tank. Because in order to stop the 1 to 2 swings, do it like in order to make it 1 to 2 instead of 4 to 5. Do you know what you're relying on? You're relying on the rest of your team to bail you out of that pressure. You're relying on 3 or 4 people to actually damage the Reinhardt. If there's not 3 or 4 people to damage the Reinhardt, which there won't be in low ranks, because low rank players don't communicate and focus the right target for shit, and if we're in Spilo's world, where low rank players in general are disincentivized from shooting the tank, then they won't focus the tank at points like this, where it matters. They'll just ignore the tank. And then they'll just walk around killing everyone like Reinhardt always has done at low ranks. Ooh. So you can make... So essentially, personally, if an Ashe is on that corner and has you... If a Cassidy on that corner has used roll and I press this, I am completely at the liberty of my team to all shoot the Reinhardt or me to get peeled by something like Suzu. I'm completely at the liberty of them. So if I am on that corner, I must have the roll ability. If I can press this and the Cassidy cannot roll away, he can't play there. So you either stalemate abilities or you play more boring. That's the argument. So what you're saying is you like this? That's what I'm getting. Thank you for being here, August. I appreciate you being here. Oh god. I'm gonna go off in a second. Oh my Jesus Christ. And I'm gonna stop this here because Spilo's disconnected from my arguments. He's not on track with me, and that's kind of frustrating. That's my failing. But I do feel like if somebody... I do think that I needed to put more justification in for my arguments like this. But I felt like I didn't have time in the video. I felt like pressured for... I felt pressured to concisely conclude with the turnaround and stuff like that, of the reveal of it's actually about the other tanks and the way that it still applies to the other tanks. I thought that my analogies on Roadhog for all of the main part could be easily applied by people, but I do get that it's kind of like 20 minutes away on the timeline. So yeah, a new hit came from YouTube. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with all my questions. Learned a bunch today. No problem at all. I've got to fly. Got lucky to catch the stream every weekend, Friday through Sunday, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. BST. Please turn up on 4 p.m. Sunday BST so we can do a 6v6 pugs that we run every single week. All you have to do is come to here, go to this channel down here, this waiting room channel, on Sunday at 6 p.m. BST, and we will literally just put 4 p.m. BST, and we'll literally just put you in a game. It's that simple. Just come play with us. Yes, YouTube. I think that works. No, that does not work because that's spelled. Yeah, I think that the general idea that you have to communicate in order to stop this pressure on this corner, if they are lethal, is so oppressive to low ranks. Thanks for the stream, Minch. I love you. Thank you for lurking. Izan, thank you for being here.